This is The Bad Listener with Danny Stroh.
Hey, I don't know. You never watched Cowboy Bebop, right? The anime show.
No, no, no,
But
no.
there's like that in the timeline of Cowboy Bebop. There's this whole thing that happens. Like they try to do something with space travel at a certain time, and it wipes out all technology on Earth and erases everything. So there's like a dark period. So
Yeah.
they still don't, even though everything's saved because it's the internet. They have like no prior knowledge of humanity before like 2183 or something, because like all that saved information was on the internet, but like some kind of the moon blew up or something,
Okay.
and it like that was
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean,
So maybe that could happen.
right. I'm sure.
You know, who knows? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about. But all right, we'll get into your pick because your pick, dude. If when I asked you to pick an album, I completely didn't think of that album at all or that band at all. And when you said it, I was like, "Oh my god, that's perfect." I'm like, I didn't even think of that. Like in my head, I'm like, "All right, he's gonna go
Hip hop.
hip hop or metal or something." I'm like, and realistically, the funny part about the whole thing was, I thought like thinking of people I was gonna have, I'm like, everyone's gonna do hip hop metal, and I'm like, it's gonna be all hip hop metal. I'm like, I have no in between for anything. And then, and then Mike came on and did rock, and then you gave the album which was rock, and I'm like, now we're doing. I'm like,
So
all right,
rock
it's cool.
podcast.
I'll roll with it. I don't care because I'll have more than enough hip hop. Like hip hop is like one of the most passionate genres, that people like now. So, but it was awesome when you told me. All right, so your pick was Parquet Courts, Wide Awake, which clearly also one of my favorite albums of the past, I don't know, 15 years. Um, and it was awesome that you picked that because I love it. It actually challenged me because I felt kind of spoiled when you picked that. I'm like, usually like I'm thinking my pick is going to be the one where it's like, all right, I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna give you this, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I'll
I
put
couldn't.
you on.
I was like, you're already giving me the one that I love. I'm like, all
Yeah,
right,
I
let
want
me
to talk
challenge
about it.
myself a little bit. I don't, and it was funny. So my pick was, I mean, we'll go over the Parquet Courts Wide Awake, but my pick was Talking Heads Fear of Music. And I kind of challenged myself a little bit because I'm not a big Talking Heads fan. Like
Oh, really?
no, I like the Talking Heads, but they're nowhere near like one of my top favorite bands of all time or anything
Damn.
like that.
Yeah.
So the reason that I picked that album is because I wanted to compare like the whole thing with you picking an album and then me matching the genre was like trying to get something on the same level. And with that album that you picked, it's so hard to compare anything to that album. Anything I've ever really heard. So really what it comes down to is where Talking Heads, I think their genre can compare, or that album, the genres can compare, and I'm sure you've heard the similarities when you listen to both
For
albums.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, that album I wanted to pick specifically because that was kind of the beginning of doing rock and roll in that fashion. So like I don't know if you how much research you did on that album. It was made in 1979. So that album kind of like paved the way for all these bands in the 80s to do all this, you know, all these things that have never really been done before in the 60s and 70s. They kind of like, were the pioneers of these sounds that you wouldn't normally hear in rock and roll music. They had all these different, the punk, the dance punk, all these different, the synth pop, like all these different sounds that were like melded together. You would almost think like in order to make that album, you would have had to have all those genres established. And it was like, they were almost like saying, okay, we're going to make an album and you're going to create 10 genres off this
From
one
the
album
album.
that
It
we
kind
made.
of feels like that, right? It's almost like they were just doing experiments, and then like
But experiments
somebody heard it, and they're like, "Oh, okay, let me
uh,
make music around that whole."
yeah, well, I mean that's kind of how music works, right? I mean, it's kind of like somebody makes something that sounds different but good, and you're like, oh wait, I can take that and go this way with it, and I can take it and go this way with it, and that was kind of like one of those albums, like, and that's not even their best album. They've got other albums. there's
What do you think their top album is?
I know I was trying to think of the name
What
of
is
it.
the name? Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it right now, but they have a what is it called? Remain in Light. Remain in Light is probably their best album, which came out right after it. But this album really was at the beginning of that time where because it was still the 70s. I mean, I think that album was made in the 70s before there was sounds like that even. There was nothing like that even created. And the thing about Wide Awake was Wide Awake felt like an album, and I'll explain this 100 times over. I think rock and roll right now is in a dead period. I just don't think there's a lot of great rock albums coming out, at least since like the 2000s. I know like 2000s you had like the Strokes and Interpol. There was like a lot of good bands. These are good. I mean, I wouldn't put them as like a top of the.
I just liked them in 28 Days Later.
No, yeah, no. But when that album came out, and I was a fan of Parquet Courts before that album, but that album was for me what put them over the top from like this punk rock, post-punk band that was doing cool stuff to like you're on a whole nother level now. Now you made an album that's got sounds that nobody can replicate. There's no other person there's no other band that's going to be able to go out there and put a punk rock song, a post-punk song, a dance punk song. Like they have so many different sounds on so many, like every track felt such like an individual track that could have been on its own album. And they were able to do this all together. It blew me away. It was one of the reasons why I heard this album. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that was one of the albums where it's like, all right, I'll listen to a couple songs. Oh my God, I'll listen to a couple more. And there was a point where I listened to the whole album. Like this whole album from front to back it's almost flawless.
It's very good.
So good. Like,
yeah.
And even, I forgot the name of the last song on it, but the last song on there was like one of those songs that I didn't even listen to in the beginning. And I heard it later on and I was like, this song is unbelievable. Like every song from front to back, like they've put the amount of work in. And I don't want to take anything away from them. Do you know who produced the album?
No.
So Danger Mouse produced the album.
Really?
Yeah. So Danger Mouse, but he's produced rock albums. He's like the funny part about this conversation is me and Shay had a whole conversation about Danger Mouse because one of the albums that I picked to challenge his album was Danger Mouse and Black Thought's album, Cheat Codes, and that wasn't even my introduction to Danger Mouse. I think the first time I heard of Danger Mouse is when he did the MF Doom collaboration.
That's where I know him from.
Yes,
from
so that
Doom
was when
stuff,
I first heard of him, and then when I started digging into him, he actually he did a bunch of Black Keys albums. Like he's like a real deal producer. Like give him something and he turns it into gold type of guy. Like he's really good with that type of stuff. So I don't want to give all the credit to Danger Mouse to take away from Parquet Courts. I loved Parquet Courts before this album came out, but it was finished very nicely, and I would have to say some of that has to do with Danger Mouse being the producer.
Also, all
of
those
that
wacky
album.
Different sounds and stuff too. It's like, it's like, all right,
Listen,
this is someone that's like really playing.
And when I
around
say
with
Danger
sound.
Mouse produced the album, it's not like Danger Mouse made they made the music.
Yeah.
He just kind of like is the director, like type of okay, let's do this one, go this way with this one type of, tweak the knobs type of guy where he made everything sound very good in my opinion. I mean, like just phenomenal. And that's one of those albums where you can see like the production is just phenomenal. But he did an amazing job on that. I mean, Parquet Court's best album for sure. The one album they came out after that, probably one of their worst albums, which is a letdown. But I would say anybody into any type of just rock and roll or punk rock, post-punk type of music, you have to listen. It's like a must listen for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way
when
you can go without
when
listening.
you put me on and told me we were gonna go see them or whatever, and then I started listening, and then I was like already into it. And then when we saw them live, I was like, this is like
great show,
so much fun.
Yeah.
And now, like, I mean, we're gonna have we're doing like the wedding playlist. Like, there's like there's like 2 or 3 songs from this
I was
album
gonna say,
on the playlist. Like,
I was
I'm
going to
like,
say, we used, I don't know if you remember, on my wedding, we used the song Wide Awake that me and Kristen came out to for the
oh,
presentation.
that's what that
Yeah, Wide
oh,
Awake.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so run it
Yeah.
back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're
I had
just
to,
nuts.
but-
Like, I don't know. Yeah, we've been listening like nonstop.
So what's your favorite song off that album?
Not Total Football.
Is that your least favorite? Is that what you said that? Or?
No, I just feel like it's like always coming up and
Total Football is a good. You know what's funny? I almost didn't like Total Football
I think
a
it's
lot in the beginning, and I felt like it grew on me. It was like one of those songs where I felt like it was.
I agree with
it was
that. It's
boring
like,
in the beginning, and now I'm like, all right, I kind of like this song now. But I do feel like that was one of their songs that they promoted the most as to be like their front runner songs for the album was Total Football.
I think it depends on my mood. I don't know. Before the water gets too high, I like a lot.
Oh my god, what a great song!
I think that,
That's
and that
like another song. The sound on that
it's
one,
just like wacky. I mean, I like Tenderness a lot too.
That was the end.
That's
that was
the
song
other
couldn't
one
remember.
that I have.
So
I like
that's
starred
their-
them on Spotify. That's what I was doing on my phone.
That's
like,
their final song on the album,
Yeah.
which I don't know how many times I maybe I stopped the album before I got to that song or whatever it was. I just didn't remember that song as much until later on, and I'm like, this song is amazing.
I think I'm gonna
like,
say Tenderness is my favorite song.
Yeah, Tenderness.
That's the one she likes too. Like, it's just, yeah.
Tenderness, I think, is my second favorite. I'm still gonna say, what is it? Didn't have to start a fight. What is that?
Yeah, is that on that album? Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
What number is that? I need like
That's
a track
the
list.
I don't know. I think it's like mid album somewhere.
Do you listen to music? What's your deal with like? Will you play some song clips during the podcast? Really?
You can't.
You can't really, right?
Well, for copyright issues, you can't.
Oh. Yeah, I was wondering why. Yeah.
No, I would love to. Yeah, I would play music in the background the whole time. No, you can't. Even Rogan got in trouble for it while he was even on Spotify. You can't.
Crazy.
It's wild.
Well, it's funny because like the more I listen to this album, and then after it's been like a while since we planned this, and I was trying to I've been running around and just whatever, we keep missing each other, and it's like finally we're doing it, but I was like trying to pick something. And I think one of the reasons I picked this is because of our mutual. I mean, I would say all the music I like, really.
Yeah.
90% of the music I've listened to our whole lives is because you're the more musical out of the two of us, obviously. And, like, you put me on to stuff, and then I get into genres. Like, that's how it's always been. I kind of, like, follow your lead, and then I branch off and stuff, But, like, I felt like, it was like, we have a couple bands like that we've seen together where I was like, we could have a really cool conversation about it because we've had shared experiences with the band.
Right.
But I felt like this was one of the more recent ones that was because I wanted to pick like food or something, like
that
or
would've been
Doomsday, like no because like that like because for me like as someone who's not like particularly musical or doesn't do like deep dive studies into stuff. At least with the hip hop stuff and with that, I like pick apart the lyrics more.
Yeah.
So then but then I was like, I just love this album and it'll be fun to talk about it. But then when you picked the Talking Heads album, I started just listening to them back to back.
Yeah.
To try to like find comparisons. Cause then you're like, all right, why did he pick it? Right? Like, what's the reasoning? And I'm coming from this novice approach where I'm like, all right, let me, oh yeah. Did you buy that night?
No. I bought that. I don't know when I bought that, but I bought that a while ago.
Even
I've had
art
that.
is just,
I've
like,
had
wacky
that.
and great.
The funny part was I picked when I picked Fear of Music. I had actually bought that on vinyl at like a thrift shop in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and forgot I did. It wasn't until after I picked it and I started
You're
listening
like,
to it,
oh.
and I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm like, I think I actually bought this album on vinyl. So that's funny. Hold on, I think I have that too. Hold on.
I almost brought over, like, I still have, we need to have another day where, I mean, I have 8 boxes of records that I got that are unopened, and I don't even know, a lot of it's, like, very obscure stuff that I think maybe isn't that great, but I'm like, and I, like, almost don't want to open them, because I feel like I could just sell a lot of them. There we go. And But anyway, I was comparing these two, and I was like, is he picking the Talking Heads one because of the content of the songs being like sort of political or environmentally minded? Because then, like, the more you listen to the lyrics, and it's hard. Yo, Fear Music, it's really hard to understand what they're saying a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like they you. I don't know if their accent or what's going on. I'm like, what did he say? I have to like keep. I was like trying to read lyrics and stuff, but it's like they're both kind of like talking about a lot of that stuff, like the machine, and like greed and stuff. It's a lot of like.
Yeah. I don't.
Not
I
even
mean,
political. It's like societal commentary. It's
I know. I pick up on it a little bit as far as like, you know what's funny? I don't pay attention too much to lyrics anymore unless it jumps out at me. Like I've kind of developed into this like just based on pure audio aesthetics. Like if it sounds good, the content doesn't really matter that much. And I kind of like, to me now, content is like a plus, but it's not. I know a lot of people that'll be like especially like hip hop listeners, it's like, no, it has to be content. Like content is what
I think that's a hip hop listener thing, because it really, like, a lot of it's like poetry, right? I mean, I guess it's all music, but it's like, you're like, a lot of it is exciting because you're listening to all these like play on words and hidden meanings and triple meanings of words. So you're just like, what they're talking about in their poem or their song is like, that's what it's about, you know? The beat is like more secondary sometimes. Especially with the more headier hip hop that's like, you know, more real hip hop is like all more and more lyrically dense and
conscious.
Has a lot. And it's like a whole fun thing to get into that, you know? Like I get it 100%. I mean, I always think about like August Burns Red. Because, like, I liked August Burns Red a lot, like, just listening to metal. And, like, I didn't know they were, like, a Christian band, like, the whole time. Like,
but it's like, who cares?
But, like, you know, and who cares? But, like, I didn't realize, like, I'm like, oh, like, this has this whole meaning that I wasn't even aware of. I just like the way it sounds. Completely. Like, it just wasn't, I mean, that's kind of like how... It's funny, like when you divide hip hop up now, because it's diverged so much into different, I guess, like different genres, but different styles of how guys do things now. Because you'd be like, all right, there's still there's a lot of very conscious hip hop out there that's really good, but then you also get the hip hop that's basically they're like rapping about nothing. It's the same like gangster rap. Yeah. Like it's more there's like, no content whatsoever. It's just like a feeling or like a
Well, the way I look at it, right, and this is kind of towards like, so I don't know if you listen to a lot of like Alchemist albums.
I have, yeah. I mean, not recently, but yeah, like Alchemist stuff is like very.
Alchemist is like as far as I'm concerned, Alchemist is like top of the game right now as far as he's handpicking like this guy is an amazing, lyricist or hip hop artist, whatever, and I want to do an album with him. I'm going to do all the beats. He's going to do all the lyrics, and it's a combo album. So every album he puts out right now is a combo album. He's like as a title artist for every album he puts out now, which he wasn't doing for the first 10 years of his career. What they do is, or what most hip hop artists do is, a pay for song type of producer. So they'll make an album and then just pick a bunch of producers. Hey, I'll give you $1,000 to create a beat. I need a beat. And it's kind of like a pay for beats type of thing. So guys will get credit for it, like in the credits, but you're not a title on the album because you didn't do the whole. Alchemist is saying, no, like, it's going to be me and you. I'm doing all the beats and you're doing all the songs. Yeah. And that's the whole album, and it's going to be me and you. And just keeps doing that over and over again. He's doing it like 4 times a year. He's coming out like 4 albums a year.
I gotta listen to some of these Alchemist albums.
But
are they good?
Every artist he picks, they're genuinely just good hip hop lyricists. It's basically no content. Like there's no, like if you're looking, it's not conscious hip hop. It's gangster rap, but it's highest level. So the way I look at that is like these guys are doing it for sport. Like this is a sport for them. They're like, I'm gonna dominate at it. It sounds amazing. Like the sound is ridiculous. And as far as hip hop goes, like fundamentally back to 90s hip hop and beats, it's top notch. His albums
Wow.
are like top notch. But there's no content.
It doesn't have a
whatsoever.
crazy,
no
deeper message. No.
There's no message. There's no story. It's all sport.
Wow.
But it's great if you're in it for the sport.
Yeah.
If you're not in it for the sport, like I've talked to guys like, no, if there's no content, like I'm in it for the content. Like
Yeah.
I want the meaning. They want that conscious hip hop.
Which is an interesting way to look at music, because I feel like, at least personally, it's very mood based, like the things I want to listen to, and there might be a day where I'm driving around and I want that kind of rap. And then there might be a time I'm like quietly contemplating, or I
100%.
want to hear someone talk about the welfare system in New York City, you know, like some like deep, hard issue, or something that happened to your family, or like, you know, it's just,
or what,
just depends on what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the content is, it doesn't. But it's just some people, and there's different. And then you've got guys who are going out there doing super experimental stuff, which still sound like not super. I shouldn't say super, because they're really super experimental stuff that sounds terrible. But like the two artists in hip hop that I like to say are going in a different direction and kind of taking hip hop to that next level are Tyler the Creator and Danny Brown. So if you listen to like something, I mean, really, you could take any of Tyler's last 4 albums. I think were unbelievable. Probably Flower Boy was where he really started off, and that's really probably one of his best albums.
I love that album.
I mean, everyone says Igor is his last album, but it's hard to consider that a hip hop album. Igor is more of an R&B album, which still shows how
he really
talented
sings.
he
He's
is.
singing all the time.
And for it to sound that well, I mean, like, for that album to sound so good, and for it to just be, an R&B album from a hip hop artist that sounds like that is really great. But yeah, I mean, Tyler really, I think, started, and Danny Brown kind of went in that not in that direction, where I think Tyler went in more of an R&B experimental direction that sounds really amazing, to where Danny Brown kind of went a little bit more like electronic. He kind of went a little bit more into like the glitch hop genre, which I hate, but he somehow is able to make it sound good. I mean, Danny Brown really takes it to another level too, which I love him. And those are like hard sells on somebody who grew up on like 90s hip hop and doesn't want to listen to new hip hop. Like, you can't sell them on people like that. You have to sell them on the Alchemist albums. You have to sell them on the Boldy James is one of the greats, right? Rock Marciano and those guys who were like in it for the sport. Because that's kind of like what 90s felt like. It felt like a sport.
Yeah, everybody's like jousting all the time, around neighborhood to neighborhood.
I mean, I think there was a lot of like conscious that people didn't take as conscious, because conscious didn't really exist in the 90s, because it was just hip hop. Like, I mean,
I know. Then you listen to a Wu-Tang album now, and you're like, oh, there's all this like, felt like they were trying to do something.
Well, I mean, like, when you create 36 Chambers and there's like nothing like it before, it's not like you can say, well, this is this type of. There was just hip hop back then. So like, but now if you want to go back and dissect it, like, listen, technically that's kind of I mean, like, they were talking about real problems that was like their real, like the real situations.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you got into like 2000s hip hop, they were talking about like. They weren't really talking. I mean, maybe they glamorized selling drugs, but they were mainly talking about the amount of money they had that they had made off hip hop, which isn't really conscious. Now you're just like gloating, like you're not. Yeah. It's not. There's really like almost no content to it whatsoever. So that's. That's kind of where like it's where it's at right now in hip hop, as where it divulges into all these different categories. I don't know why we got onto hip hop when we picked rock albums. But the one thing I try to like not emphasize, but it sucks. Like, I love rock and roll music so much, and it really goes for metal too right now. I just feel like those genres are in a slump. The same way, like, I felt that hip hop was in a slump in the 2000s. I literally stopped listening to hip hop in the 2000s because I felt like it got so bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, we went from 90s hip hop, which sounded
Nuts.
awesome,
Yeah.
to like this. It was just so over commercialized, and I stopped listening to hip hop for years. It wasn't until, and I explained, it wasn't until Good Kid, Mad City came out, and somebody put me on to Good Kid, Mad City, which I didn't even know. I didn't even know who Kendrick Lamar was. Somebody's like, "Yeah, this dude Kendrick Lamar put out this album. You got to hear it." And I'm like, yeah, another hip hop album. And I actually sat and listened to Good Kid, Mad City. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, I think hip hop's back. I'm like, this is crazy.
This is wild.
And that's kind of like where I was like, I got to find more of this, and kind of like dove back into hip hop, because 2000s hip hop, or at least commercial hip hop, you have to understand.
That's the
too.
thing. Someone's
People will
always
go
doing
back now and be like, oh, there was underground hip hop in the 2000s that was great. I'm like, I agree with you. How was I supposed to hear it in the 2000s?
Yeah.
We barely had the internet. I'm like, where was it? If I can't listen to it on the radio, where am I listening to
unless
it?
I'm in the scene. Right?
Yeah,
I'm
like
in
what?
some place
I
in
don't.
Brooklyn. I'm not.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you're
Unless-
not in that world, it's like.
If you're not in that world, I mean, where else you happen to buy a mixtape on Canal Street? Like, there's no way for you to know that even exists.
I know, it's pretty crazy to think about. The radio was like for regular people that weren't in that community. It's just now it's like you can just get great music from any genre with a little bit of research.
It's easy to find if you really want to find it. It's not hard to find because the internet makes it easy for that reason. But before that, I mean, like in the 2000s, like you were just exposed to whatever you were exposed to.
It's like what Hot 97 played.
Right.
Now I can't turn Hot 97 on. Ever.
And imagine
I mean, it's
your
horrible.
only exposure to hip hop was Hot 97.
And
now?
it's still Funk Flex. That's the sad part.
I know.
Still him on there doing his thing. No disrespect to him.
No,
I mean, he's
I
a
mean-
legend, but it's like, no, it's just like whatever's playing. I mean, it's actually he's an interesting DJ to think about too, just from listening to him like essentially my whole life since
Right.
middle school, that he seems, at least from an outside perspective, just as excited about anything that's coming out as the landscape shifts like crazily 30, 40 years. Like it's just, he's just happy as a clam.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
listening to all this stuff.
But so my point is what hip hop was going through then,
Rock is going through now.
rock and metal essentially. I mean, I tried to look it up a couple weeks ago. I'm like, how many new metal bands have came out after 2010 that I think are like great? It's been 15 years. How many
Yes.
can you name off the top of your And even if you say Better Lovers, that's made of
That's
two
good.
other metal bands
Yeah.
that were also great. So
I
that
know.
almost doesn't really count.
It doesn't count.
It's really not that many. I mean, I can name maybe, if I name 10, that would be a lot. I would say it's probably somewhere between 5 and 10, but that's nothing compared to what we got between 1990 and
Yeah, just-
2010.
yeah,
There's
just a
hundreds.
crazy
There's
influx.
hundreds Yeah.
I know. So why is that? It's like something comes out. There's like ebbs and flows to every genre. I guess.
I think it's the way the music goes, and people kind of follow these paths and say like, well, this is what music is gonna, or people push too hard on a genre to make it sound different. Like that's what I feel like it is for rock. I don't know about metal, but for rock, it just feels like people are trying too hard. They're trying too hard to sound different or new, or in the opposite direction. So I've gone through every rock band that came out with an album this year, and it's either they sound super boring, or like it's noise. It's not even music. So
Wow.
it's almost like they're not trying at all, or they're trying way too hard to sound different, and it just sounds like garbage.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it just
not. It's
sounds
too
like-
much.
And that just seems like the path that everyone keeps taking. I don't know. I don't know if it's something that's... I think it's just a product of what happens to music over time.
Is the right word homogenization? It's like when things like all start to sound the same because like there's some kind of financial or like, all right, this way of doing this genre is what like pays the bills and people are drawn towards, so a lot of people start going in that direction
okay, so
because they're gonna like cash out on it, and then it just ends up with like not being anything.
Sure, but we'll if you can you name a popular rock band on the radio?
No. Parquet course.
It almost doesn't. They're
They're
not
not
on
on
the
the radio. I know.
But my point is, it's almost like rock doesn't even exist on the radio anymore. Like what?
I know, that's a whole other can of worms. I'm sure there's some satellite radio, maybe.
But satellite radio is specified genres on channels where you're not listening to really. I mean, maybe they have a channel for new rock, and I guess I'd be pretty interested. But listen, I've never had satellite, but every time I'm in a car with somebody with satellite, they're listening to 90s rock channel
I know. I was
on
gonna.
satellite.
It's like just more different options, and that's all that's available. When I think of rock and roll, what rock and roll I'll hear like moving through life. If I'm not making a choice on my own using a streaming service, or YouTube or something, I'm gonna hear like classic rock. That's what is around. I'll hear classic rock at a bar, or in a restaurant. Or maybe on a station that's catering to a different generation.
Classic.
Listening to things like I can maybe hear Talking Heads on the radio.
Yeah. Well, no, Talking Heads was. It's actually funny that Talking Heads was pretty commercial. They actually had a lot of songs on the radio. But I say that because there are so many bands that were formed in the 80s and put out amazing rock music in the 80s that went completely just under the radar, never were on the radio or hardly any radio whatsoever.
Just like made great art, disappeared.
Like that was like for me going back and being able to find new old music that was new to me. The 80s was the genre where I was like, there was all this rock music that I didn't know existed because at the time that I guess that was when record labels really took over and said.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like there's like a whole conversation to be had that I know nothing about, based on like the only access. Well, not like the only access people had to music was like around the record labels, and they were really curating.
TV and the radio.
Yeah. So if that group of people and businesses are not curating that music, you don't hear about it.
Of course.
The bands in Arkansas. You live in Boston. I mean, it's just like it never gets out.
It's not about that. It's you have heads of record labels deciding on what gets heard.
Yeah. So then it's like.
So you're performing your music, or you're giving your tape that you recorded to a record label and saying, here's my tape, listen to it, and he's going, I don't really like it.
Yeah, and that's it.
And that's it.
Just
and you don't get signed, and that's just how the world works.
I wonder how many things are lost in time like that. I mean, really.
Well, the part about it which is interesting is you could still record your music, and you could still record it for smaller record labels. You just weren't getting played on the radio. You weren't getting any album sales because your records weren't getting distributed to record shops because you weren't a major label.
Yeah.
And the two biggest bands that were the icons of that whole movement were the Velvet Underground in the late 60s, early 70s, and Joy Division, which was the late 70s, early 80s, because almost every band that makes music today says they're one of the reasons that they started making music. And the sad part about it is those guys made absolutely nothing because their records never got sold. They never got listened to at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking late 60s, early 70s. That's classic rock era. My father would listen to classic rock every day. His thing was classic rock. That was his genre. Never heard one song by it.
He knows about them now.
No. I mean, how would he?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can tell him about him, but he would have to go on Spotify and look him up. I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned it to him. Like, and the only reason I know is I've had this conversation with him. He's like, I've never heard of the Velvet Underground.
Meanwhile, all those guys that made music at that era probably like that was their contemporary. A lot of them knew about them. You think?
I don't know how that works because even if you were making music at that era, how would you know about them unless I guess there was some type of underground channel that you were able to. Remember, there's no internet, so like the only way to listen to it is on the radio or through hard copy.
You could have this whole crazy meta kind of discourse about like how it's probably the most exciting time, even if you're saying like rock is like having a rough patch or whatever. Like this is the most interesting time to talk and enjoy music, and it's just going to get more and more in a lot of ways better and better as time goes on because like
Well,
you know,
dude,
pre-recorded music, there's nothing, right? There's like a couple of things that survived. And now it's just like what we talked about in the beginning about recording a podcast and having video record of us having a conversation. It's like now it's just like anyone can put out anything and anyone can hear it. And it's just going to get more. And then the more people that hear it, the more strands and different things happen from inspiring and listening to different kinds of musicians. And so you're just like...
It's also like the ultimate test, right? Because now like the record label doesn't control what you can put on the internet.
Yeah.
You put something on the internet and it catches fire. You know you got something good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it'll never be on the radio. You got big off nothing. There was no promotion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the
mean?
Music's good and people enjoy it.
Well, the saying behind the Velvet Underground was sold 10,000 records, influenced 10 million artists.
Yeah. I mean,
that's wild to think about, right? I mean, it's really, and people are, well, before its time. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. They were before their time because if they weren't, then those record labels would have picked them up. But they didn't because they were making music that nobody had really heard of yet. You know what I mean?
So it wasn't like a viable business model for the record label.
Right. Well, they were like, well, this is what the record. Listen, you're talking about a business. You want a record label. What do you want? You want to create more money. You want to sell more records, right? Because the more records you sell, the more money you make. So now this band comes in and goes, here's our record, and you're like, nobody's listening to this. Nobody's gonna buy this. This isn't anything that people are into.
Yeah.
So I'm not signing you.
They're not doing it for the love. Like, it's like we're not. Yeah, they're trying to make money.
But how does music progress without people being able to even hear it? You understand what I'm saying? Like if you can't even hear it.
Well, maybe it doesn't. Like I was thinking about that, like because I don't know. I'm just in my head now. I'm having a whole musical, like what going down a rabbit hole over here. But I'm just thinking about like the amount of different musical genres in the United States in like the year 1910, right?
Okay.
Like how many different genres were there? Not a lot. Because there wasn't a lot of conversation or communication or listening to lots of different stuff. You had a radio.
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, first of all, you didn't really have electric, so you're talking about
only acoustic, and
wind
you can't
instruments
record
and
things,
string instruments, and you're also based on like what's already there. So you can only make, like at that point, you could really only make music based on what you've heard. Personally, without any type of TV or internet or radio.
Yeah, so you're not hearing a lot because you're.
It's
like a quieter
word of
world.
mouth. It's word of mouth. You sat at a fucking place and heard a guy play a guitar, and now you're like, I want to try something like that, and like that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there were school. Like I'm not giving enough credit. I mean,
well,
there
was
music conservatories and things.
Yeah,
like,
it
was a big.
There were concerts.
Yeah.
There were concerts, right? There were symphonies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was stuff like that, and I actually think that dominated. I think like the orchestra type symphonies dominated the music genre before 1940s, really. I mean, there was like folk, I guess, right? Like the Irish had the old Celtic folk songs and stuff like that went on for like 100 years and stuff like that.
What was like the general public in like Beijing listening to in like 1910?
Dude, I'll be honest with
like
you,
that's like
I don't know. I've tried to look into like other countries' music, and there's not a lot of music coming out of any well, I guess since it's been recorded, and obviously America's been a hub for music for 100 years, but like you can really only find genres coming out of like really South America and Central America is like the biggest. Right, and then there's like a lot of Japanese stuff. Like Japanese was into recording a lot of music.
Yeah,
they're
they
like
just
certain.
Yeah, they go off.
But even if you go to like Italy, like they really were like the symphony type stuff, and then they didn't have like a big music scene after that. Like you know what I mean? Like there's the Italo disco stuff.
I love that. Big
too.
Italo disco guy. But yeah, no, I know. It's like the United States really seems like this, like, mix and trade.
That's also funny because it's fueled mostly, right? Like the classic rock era is fueled mostly by England. Most of those bands, like the Beatles,
True.
Led Zeppelin, Rolling
Yeah.
Stones,
They're all
The Who. That's all
England.
British music. That was like a big kick to me because like when I started listening to classic rock in high school, like I didn't realize that. Like I'm not looking at where bands are from. I'm just listening to music, and it wasn't until like I started figuring out like, wait, these bands are all from England. I'm like, what bands are from America? And
Yeah.
like, oh, there's Bruce Springsteen and like Leonard Skinner. I guess it's like there's really not that many. It's kind of crazy.
pretty
Like when you
crazy.
think about it, because I guess it became I guess it stemmed from, like Elvis and stuff like that, right? Like because he was from America, so I guess I kind of like sparked that genre, that music scene, and they kind of like rode the bandwagon by coming over and doing it. But yeah, it's weird to think about. That was like one of the big weird things to think about when it came to classic rock music. Kind of like eye-opening. That's like a lot of the major greatest bands of classic rock where we think it's like such an American thing. It's like all those bands are from England. It's like it's not. Most of it is not American.
That's wild. I mean, I'd love to talk to like these guys in Parquet courts now and see like what do they. It'd be really cool to have a conversation with them about like what do they think of the state of rock now and like where they stand with that. Like I can't remember who we saw with them when we saw them play this. Like who was an opener?
Oh, the opener for them? Their
do you
opener
remember?
was Sun Ra Orchestra. It was like a jazz band.
Well,
It was
Sun
like,
Ra Orchestra's prolific and amazing. I've actually seen
Is
them.
it Sun Ra or no? Sun Ra's the older one, right? It was
Sun
something
Ra's like a
that.
bunch of older people.
Yeah, no. Or
They're
maybe it is-
sick. Sun Ra's sick though. It might have been them.
It
They
might have been
play in
Sun Ra.
Brooklyn like all the time.
Yeah, it
like
might have
I
been
saw
them
them
then.
as an opener to some like completely other random
Yeah.
thing. They're like every time you see them, you're like, they're unreal. Like,
Yeah. That was it was them or a band like them that was the opener for them. Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
so
that.
something kind of like a little bit out of left field is like who they're choosing as their.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like the
Yeah,
only
like-
other time we saw them was at that beer festival at Knockout Center,
Yeah,
and they were playing with like 20 other bands. That wasn't like a.
that was just like whatever.
Yeah,
who wants to
yeah.
come do this?
Right. I mean, a lot of them were the same genre. I felt like, but that's another thing.
They're also from Queens,
just so
right?
you-
Like it's like
Yeah. Well. Yeah. They're,
so like that's kind of in Queens.
but just
It's
so
like-
you know, too, was something I figured out over time is I don't think they actually get to pick their openers. Their openers are dependent on the record label.
that makes sense.
Like I think, again, I don't really know anything. I think how it works from what I've read is that the record label sets up their tours, and they set up like, okay, you're gonna tour with this band and this band. You're all on the same label. Like obviously they do the same genre.
Yeah,
I mean, most labels have like one genre for the most part, but like
yeah, it's like a similar.
it's kind of
thing.
like, okay, they came out with an album, you came out, you're all going to do a tour together, promote your albums and support each other. It's not like, oh, I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy. The only time you really see the collision of bands you really love, like it's like festivals, because festivals doesn't matter. It's like,
Yeah.
you'll have up 10 stages. And
they're not going on tour with like.
No, the tour, I think the
random
tours are
friends.
mainly just all the same bands from the same record label.
Yeah, they're like,
they
I'm
have
gonna
to be on the
push
same
this
record
groove.
label.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Go
don't
out
think
and-
they're like picked. I think it's just, what
Yeah.
I mean, type of thing.
It always feels that way. Like, oh, we love these guys. We've been on tour with them all. Like it's like, I
Yeah,
feel like it's
yeah.
like
Well, I mean, they probably do. I mean,
They
I'm sure they
probably-
grow
sure
a
they do,
relationship
and
when you're
they-
playing
of
100
course.
shows with them or whatever it is. Like, I'm sure you become friends with the people,
yeah.
I don't know. I've never... I think either way
They're
you
just
have to say
coworkers.
something.
That, like I hate them. I can't stand.
I would
them.
love to see a band go up. Yeah, we're opening for these guys, but they suck.
It's like we've been with them for 3 months. Like I'm ready to.
These guys are
I'm
the
losing
biggest-
my mind.
The biggest assholes ever. No, that would totally... You can't do that. That would
Yeah,
totally...
it just makes that's like Then
No,
you get a call from the label.
It wouldn't matter. Even if you didn't get along with them, you would have to say, yeah, they're great or something, whatever. You'd have to say something
These
like
guys are legends.
that. Yeah. All right, but let me, this is, and it's funny too, because I've been
Oh,
doing
these are your top.
my top. So yeah, we're going to do the top 10 or 5, depending on the genre, albums of 2024. And it's funny, I've probably been doing this for, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years. But I do it just like in a group of friends while I'll just, like I'm in a group chat and I'll just send these out.
Yeah.
And it came to a point where like every year people are like, yo, when you sending out those?
When are you dropping this year?
Like, are those top 10s coming out soon? Like, I'm like, oh, you guys actually care? Like, I was just doing it for fun.
I was just sharing, like.
Yeah, so people, and it's funny because this is later than I normally like to do it like right before Christmas. And obviously we were supposed to do this.
Yeah, well, that's,
like,
I mean, it's like
times.
this was supposed to be.
And so I've had people keep like, hey, where's the top 10? Where's the top 10? And I'm like, all right, well, obviously it's coming, obviously. And now I have a platform, an official platform to put it out as.
Should put it in the notes underneath the podcast too.
Oh no, 100%. Yeah. And I'm definitely gonna put it in the notes. So if people want to just look at it and not listen to all the work I put into this, that's fine too. No, yeah. So we'll start off, since we did rock with Parquet Courts and Talking Heads. I'll start off with rock as a genre. Like I said, I'm only doing a top 5 with rock because, for me right now, rock is. It's not a dead genre. When I say it's like a dead genre, it's not dead. It's just, it's in a lull where it's not like other genres right now that are producing an amazing, like just an ample amount of amazing music. They're just not doing it, but there are still amazing albums you need to listen to. The number one album, I think, and this is kind of like, needs a little bit of pretext. So my number one album for this year is The Cure's Songs of a Lost World. I don't know if you've ever listened to The Cure before. What I was getting into before was bands of the 80s that I'd never heard of. The Cure was one of these bands. I did not know who The Cure was up until maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Never heard of them. It wasn't until I was able to use the internet to find bands that existed, but that weren't like huge commercial bands. And The Cure was one of these bands that kind of blew me away. And it was funny because when I heard that they were coming out with a new album, I saw they put out a new album, and it was funny. Mike actually told me on the first, because I known about this, but I hadn't listened to it at that point, and he had listened to it. He told me I had to listen to it. I assume when you see a band from the 80s put out a new album,
you're like, this is
35 years later, I'm like, there's no way this is going to be good. What are the chances? It almost never happens.
They're done. They're like just trying to get a paycheck.
You haven't put an album out in 20 years. Your career's over. Like, you're not coming. Dude, this is a must listen. It's like they picked up right where they left off in the 80s. And if you like The Cure, you'll love Songs of a Lost World.
Wow.
It's right up there. I'm telling you, it's right. I wouldn't say it's like their top. They have a lot of good albums. I wouldn't say it's like their top 2 or 3, but I would say top 5. I would say it's one of their top 5 albums. And they've got like a good 6 or 7 albums.
I wonder what that feels like at that point in your life.
Listen,
just putting out fire.
You almost never see a band come back like this and put out an album this many years later that sounds this good. And it sounds like it's not even like the voices, everything, the sound is so similar to what they did 30, 35 or whatever 35 years ago or more, I guess. Their first album I think actually came out in the 70s, and it was like 78 or 79. So most of their albums are from the 80s. To come out with an album in 2024 that sounds like it did in the 80s, it's wild, but it's good. It's I'm telling you.
Damn, all right.
If you like The Cure, and that's why I asked you before if you started listening to these, because what I played before was Disintegration. That was The Cure. I played Disintegration from front to back upstairs.
Oh.
That's why I was like, oh, did you listen to the top? Because it was kind of like homage to. If I had Songs of the Lost World on vinyl, I would have put it on up there, but I don't have it on vinyl. But I do have Disintegration, which is their best album by far. Well, not by far, but it's definitely their best album. Songs of the Lost World, gotta listen to it. My number 2, Jack White. I don't know, you familiar with Jack White, the White Stripes? Came out with an album called No Name. It might be his best album as a solo artist. I loved his original work. I think he started, his work started getting a little, I don't know, boring, I guess. No Name, it's solid blues rock, gotta listen to it. Probably his best solo work, in my opinion. Like a double disc album. I think it's like 30 tracks or something.
Jeez.
Crazy amount of tracks, but it's actually really good. It's probably not 30. It's probably like 25, but it's a lot of tracks. Really great album. Must listen to if you were a fan of the White Stripes or blues rock in general, or liked any of Jack White's past albums. You'll love this one. I think it tops it. My third album for rock is Vampire Weekend, who
Oh yeah.
I'm not a crazy fan of Vampire Weekend. Vampire Weekend, the name of the album is Only God Was Above Us. I didn't actually like Vampire Weekend's early stuff, which was actually the stuff that put them on the map
That
as
was
far as
like
being
what-
the
yeah, I
most
mean, I feel
commercial
like-
stuff.
Yeah.
I actually I think it was their third album I thought was actually the better of their work because it kind of sounded less poppy and more in depth. I forget the name of the album now. I'm terrible with this, but this album I felt is more like this. They actually came back to that sound, and I think this was a really good album. I actually was kind of turned off on it on first. I didn't really like the first time I played the album. I was like, it's all right. And then it kind of like kept going and it grew on me. And it's actually, it's one of those things where you have to listen to it. Like you can't just play an album in the background while you're like, doing something and say, okay, listen to that. That's not listening. You actually have to like play it with like silence almost, like not doing anything else really, just listen to it.
When will you do
and
that?
you
Like when you're driving?
driving's the best time.
That's like
Turn the
best-
volume all the way up.
Yeah, and just kind
Dude, it's because you're not doing anything else. Like,
yeah, it's true. Because I like the idea of like sitting and like my
well, I compare it to a difference. Like me and my wife are driving somewhere that's 2 hours away, and I'll put on music. I'm talking to her the entire. I'm not listening to the. It's
No.
like it's background music. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I
but
can't
you're like
count that
having
as.
a dialogue. You're not like absorbing or really.
No, that's the point.
It's
I'm
not
not
just
really
you
like
and the
listening
music.
to it. It's literally just background music. Like, you
I
have
would
to
say
actually
driving is like I agree with you. I
driving
used to-
or working out.
Yeah, sometimes a jog or something.
Yeah.
My uncle has something in his attic now where it's like.
He told me about it. You talking about Louis?
Yeah,
Oh,
has
he
like
told me about that whole thing.
and you sit and it's like you just get bathed with sound.
He explained that whole room
It's
to me.
so
and I'm just
crazy.
like-
He's out of his mind. It's so cool.
I'm like, I want that. I'm
Yeah,
like, I
he
need
just
that.
gets like he's just let the album cascade
like-
over me.
He said it's like,
Yeah,
and the way he describes it is great. He's got, it's like it's just a chair and the speakers, and that's like it.
Yeah, and you're like on the floor. The chair's like really low. You're very
Dude, it's
vulnerable.
all, I gotta stop by and. His
I'm
house
excited
and
to like go
check
through these
that out.
lists. Not to get you off topic here. I know you got a lot to cover, but it's.
I do have a lot to cover, and this is the problem. It's going to take forever because I'm doing this back and forth. But I don't want to just name them and then just move on to the next topic. I want to give a little bit of background on
you
what I
have
can.
to. It's like.
Okay, 4 is Fontaine's DC Romance. And in all honesty,
Never heard of them.
so Fontaine's DC is like a post-punk type of rock. I mean, like, you have to be kind of into that type of rock. If you were trying to get into this band, I wouldn't say start with this album, although I think this is a good album. Skinty Fia was my favorite album by them. I think that was an amazing album they did. That really showed their really artistic talent through depth. This one is more level bass, kind of. I would say it's on the more boring side, but it's not a boring album. It's actually a really good album. Better than I think the reviews got for it. I think people were like really down on it because it wasn't as artistic as their other albums. I don't think you have to be super artistic. I think they did a really good job on this album. Skinty Fia is a better album, but I think this is probably better than I think their first album I heard. So I don't know. I would say give it a shot if you're into that type of rock, or I guess any rock really, because there's not a lot to pick from nowadays. My 5th album. So this is new to me. I've heard of this artist, but never really got into him or tried to get into him or try to listen to his stuff. Anytime I did try to get into him, I was kind of bored by it. So this guy's called MJ Lenderman. He made an album called Manning Fireworks. I actually think this is, in my personal, my preference is this is his best album. A lot of people say otherwise. His other stuff seems a little bit, not that it's bad, but it's a little bit more boring. This is a little bit more of like a softer, plainer indie rock, but I think he does a really good job on this album. I think the the songs are much more catchy and much more, I guess, like, just grasped my attention a little bit more. So I thought this was, of his albums, my favorite, and actually got me into listening to his other albums a little bit more. Like, again, I don't think he's a bad artist. I don't even think his other albums are bad. It was just hard. It was hard for me to get into any type of music that's, I don't know if you ever had this experience, any type of music that's like a little bit softer or slower. It's almost like harder, like, to like grab hold of that and say like, this is like amazing. Like, it's,
Yeah, well, I don't think I listen to that much music like that in my life, you know, so it's sort of,
okay.
right? Really slow, soft
Well,
music.
you ever listen to like Bob Dylan?
Yeah, I do. I like Bob Dylan.
But that's, you understand, like,
I
it's
gotta
folk
see that
rock,
movie.
but it's I actually didn't see the movie yet. I want to see
We're
the movie.
going next week, I hope.
But I think, like, if you were listening to classic rock as a complete genre, Bob Dylan comes up a little bit slower and softer than
For sure.
everything else. But he's not bad.
No.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
he's
Like, it's just,
fucking Bob Dylan.
no, obviously. But I'm just using it
No,
as
I
a
know. It's
comparison
like, yeah.
to,
But it might be like the barrier of entry is a little bit higher.
yeah. Well, you listen.
Because it's
All
not
right,
what
you
you're
listen
used
to some jazz, right?
Love
But-
jazz.
Right. But jazz is a hard genre for.
Yeah, I feel like it's a hard tell. Tell that to my fifth graders.
That's my
like,
point.
Why are you putting this on? Like, give it a second.
Right. See, patience, right? It's a little bit
Let
of
it
patience.
build. I'm
It's,
like,
it's harder, and I mean, it was true. And I feel guilty every time, like, it happens to me, where I'm like, well, I didn't listen to this person because when I tried to, it was like a little bit slower, and like then you get into it, and you're like, this is actually really beautiful music. I just didn't give it like the patience or time, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe that's one of those cases with MJ Lenderman, but his new album, I think, is really great. I think everyone should give that album a shot. And those are just going to be my top 5 for rock. There were other rock albums. King Gizzard put out an album that was pretty good, but it was kind of like a little roots rock, blues rock album. In my opinion, it doesn't compare to any of their great albums. I think their albums are so great that when you say, okay, listen to this one, it's like, doesn't really do them justice as a band. It's as amazing as a band they are. And there were a bunch of other bands that put out albums. I just didn't really.
5 is
think
good, nice and
they-
clean. You know?
Okay.
Can't all be like super. I don't know.
As far as metal, again, I think metal is in the same rut as rock is
What do
right
you
now.
got on
But
top here? Oh,
my top is as biased as it may seem. It's going to be Better Lovers, Highly Irresponsible. I just think it comes across every part of it. I think is great. I can't. Actually, you know what? I will. The only part about the album, I think, that I would say, I think their production is a little bit off. I think they could have been produced a little bit better. I think the sound, for some reason, and I was comparing it because I thought I was going crazy, the sound is almost lower. So I've listened to a metal album back to back with it, and the sound is almost like dropped. I don't know if that's done on purpose. I would think that it had to be done on purpose by whoever produced it. You have to know what you're doing. Like, it's not like they have, you're not producing out of your garage. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. A lot of metal bands do production differently and weird. I had this whole thing, I had this conversation with you about the Baroness album that I felt like they produced like garbage. I don't know why they do that. But obviously it was done on purpose. That would be my only negative thing to say about the album. As far as, I love almost every song on the album. I think is flawless. Obviously it's in the metalcore genre. The thing about metal is, I know metal guys who only listen to this type of metal, metal guys who only listen to this type of metal. It seems very divided in metal as far as like, well, I only listen to black metal and death metal. I only listen to metalcore. And it's like very divided. It seems. I try to be as least divided as possible, even though I will tell you that metalcore and new metal is probably my favorite genres, so everything is going to kind of lean towards there. I also like stoner metal too, but my number 2 album, which, could have been definitely number 1, but like I said, Better Lovers, nothing can compete with that in my mind. Knock Loose, You Won't Go Before You Have to, or Before You're Supposed to. Unbelievable album as far as metalcore goes. I don't know if you've listened to this album yet.
I haven't.
Super hard, not like, when you hear a metalcore album, you think of this genre that's kind of like laid out in a certain way. It's not really like that. It's actually a super hard album for a metalcore album, and I think they did a really good job. This is a band that I've started listening to over the past couple of years and slowly kind of like got on them. This album puts them over the top. This is their album that, I mean, it's definitely for anyone who listens to the metalcore genre, you have to listen to this album. They totally went over the top with this one, and I think that they had an EP. I can't remember, A Tear in the Fabric, I think it's called. And that EP was kind of like them showing that their next album is going to be this great because of how good that EP was, and they're on a path to really do amazing things, just as Better Lovers is. Third album I have on here for metal, High on Fire. Stoner metal album. I know you're familiar with High on Fire. I was not expecting this from High on Fire. I've listened to a lot of High on Fire albums. I love a lot of their early work. This one of their top albums. I was blown away by it. I remember putting it on. I'm like, this is great stoner metal. Like, they did a great job on this album. Definitely, if you're into that type of genre, the stoner metal genre, or if you're into High on Fire albums, didn't know they came out with a new album, this is one you have to listen to. Definitely check that one out. My number 4 is from a band called Thou. You ever hear Thou? Okay, so Thou is like a sludge metal band.
Yeah, I think Joe used to like them a lot.
They're okay. I didn't never like them a lot.
Sludge metal is yeah, I have trouble with sludge metal.
I would give this one a shot, though. Umbilical is a really good album. It's heavy. It's not like their other albums. Other albums seem a little bit slower and softer as far as sludge metal goes. Thou has a very specific, sound to them, and I think this album is probably, I'm not going to say it's their best album because I'm not familiar with all their albums, but this one is a must listen to as far as sludge metal goes. It's heavy and it's very good. I would recommend that album. And now my number 5 album. So this is kind of where I steer in a different direction. I don't normally listen to death metal or black metal on any regular basis. It's not my favorite genres of metal. But there are albums that come out that really break the mold as far as how death metal is being recorded, and I think this is one of those albums by a band called Ulcerate, Cutting the Throat of God. It's crazy name. It's actually really good death metal, though. It's almost progressive death metal with it feels like they put work into it. Like, one of those things about death metal bands is I feel like it's just such noise, like just not like just no effort, almost just kind of, there's no artisticness to it at all. And this one is the complete opposite. This is how death metal should be done, is the way Ulcerate did this album.
Wow.
Very, very good death metal. And I like I said, I don't listen to death metal, and I would say if you were going to start with that, or or Gojira, I guess, is like a good start too. But that's the same thing. If you're going to do death metal, like when you do that progressive type of death metal, it just sounds so much better.
It's cool.
I think even Between the Buried and Me kind of goes into that
land,
death metal. Kinda. I mean, they're definitely way more progressive than them, but they kind of, a lot of their albums have that death metal feel to it. So that's kind of where you got to go. But this is, I would say that's a must listen for those genres. Let's go into, from there, I'll go into hip-hop, because, I'll go into hip-hop next, and this is one of the genres, like I said, I think is just flourishing right now after having a decade in the 2000s, which I think was, I don't know, lackluster and just overbearing with, radio, record label garbage. My hip-hop for this year, my number 1 is going to be Kendrick Lamar, GNX. I can't speak highly enough about this album.
Well, I really need to sit down with it.
What's up?
I need to sit down with it.
Yeah, you should definitely sit down with it. I mean, you could really sit down with any of them. The only album I really wasn't a great fan of was his last album, Mr. Morale. I thought it was just he tried to go too artistic with it.
It felt like something where he had to, where I almost can't have an opinion on it. Where
Right.
I'm just like, all right, this is
Right.
like something you needed
Yeah.
to say and do, but I don't really want to listen to this
Right.
more than I listened to it like 2 times,
Right.
and I'm like, okay.
No, I mean, there's a couple of good
You made
songs that I
your
really
art
like off
great,
it.
you know.
And I think it's listen. I
who am
think
I to
he
judge,
wanted
but
to. He had a conceptual, artistic piece he wanted to
He
do,
needed
and
to
I
do
think
it.
he did it, and that's fine. I'm not. Listen. It's not bad by any means. It's still a good album.
Yeah, I just don't want to put it on.
But it's not. It's not my favorite, and it's.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Listen.
Is what it
Listen,
is. All right,
I'll sit here and say Kendrick Lamar could be the GOAT because he's done hip hop at a level that I don't think anyone can compete with. And I think GNX holds up with that. I think he did things in GNX that, listen, just the song Reincarnated. If you want to come and try to do a song like Reincarnated, you know how difficult it is to have anything that comes close to that? I mean, if you haven't listened to the whole album yet, I'm not going to go too crazy with this because I already went into the album with Shay. We reviewed the whole album.
All right. I got to like.
But GNX holds true for me at least. And I think GNX is puts him up.
That's great. I'm excited.
Puts him up there as being the GOAT. So now the next album.
I would say what I think.
My number 2 says Joey Valence and Brae, No Hands. Have you heard this album yet?
No.
Nobody has. It'll never be played on the radio, and it is the most fun hip hop album I've heard in decades. Oh man, this was Beastie Boys reincarnated. This was coming back full-fledged comedy hip hop, but good. Solid beats, just having fun, wrecking the mic. Like they did everything perfect. This is an album that you can't recreate. I mean, this is Beastie Boys, but different and unique in its own way, but still so much fun to listen to. Like,
wow.
If you put it on, dude, you'd see what I'm talking about. It's a must. Anyone who likes hip hop or anything that sounds anything like the Beastie Boys, you have to listen to this album. So much fun.
Wow.
Joey
All
Valence
right,
and Brae's No Hands. No idea where these guys came from. Out of left field. Never heard of them before.
Do you know where they're from, like in the world?
No, I didn't look it up. They came out with an album right before this, which I had heard a bunch of tracks from. It sounded different. It was good. I liked him, and I was like, all right, these guys got something going. This took them. I mean, they went from 0 to 100 in 1 year. I mean, if they can keep pumping out stuff like this or keep,
they're gonna
doing.
they're
They're
gonna
gonna
someone
be.
will hear them. Hopefully.
I'm. This is the first album I tell. Like every people have been asking me what album should I listen to all year. I'm like, you have to listen to Joey Valence and Brae. You have to. Like as far as hip hop albums goes, this is something you gotta listen to. My number 3 is Tyler the Creator's Chromakopia. I'm a huge Tyler the Creator fan, and I wasn't always. When he started off, I didn't like him. A lot of his early stuff just didn't appeal to me at all, and I've learned to listen to his stuff with such appreciation now. The work he puts in to his albums, and this one too, I think everyone sounds different. And I think he's one of these guys who's taking hip hop into another level, into a different dimension, and he deserves the credit for it. And he's probably not going to get the credit for it anytime soon. I think in the future he probably will. I think people will probably look back and say Tyler the Creator did some really nuts stuff and really push things to another level. I think you got to listen to Chromakopia. You got to try to appreciate what he does. He's not old school. He's new school hip hop. He's just sounds you haven't heard before, but you have to try to appreciate him. He does a really good job.
Yeah, I love him.
My number 4, Mach-Hommy's RichAxxHatian, I guess it's supposed to be RichAxxHatian. This guy I've heard over the years. He's done good albums. He's put out some good work. This one is by far his best work. He did a really good job with this album. The sound, I guess, is it's abstract hip hop, semi-conscious kind of. I don't know. I mean, I think if you're into just the way that hip hop would normally sound, 90s or into 2000s hip hop. You would like Mach-Hommy's stuff. He normally does pretty abstract. This album sounds a little bit different from his old stuff, but I think he did a really good job on this album. Almost every track he really killed it on. 5, my boy Denzel Curry's King of the Mischievous South Volume 2, which is funny because when I heard he was doing this album, I thought, no, don't do it. It's going to sound terrible. And then he came out with it, and I'm like, it actually sounds really good. So he did, Denzel Curry does this, Southern hip hop, album that you would almost think like the genre doesn't really exist anymore. Nobody really puts out really good Southern hip hop. It's not like, in the 90s.
Some of the trap music maybe kind of.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of trap.
Like,
yeah, it's like partially trap.
I'm just trying to think of like in it. You watch Atlanta, like some of the stuff that Donald Glover played in Atlanta in the background as like the music for the show is like probably what's happening in that scene.
Yeah,
I'm sure he has a pulse on it,
Yeah, no, the scene definitely exists. I just think of the old big timers and juvenile.
Yeah, like I felt. I mean,
that.
when we were kids, that was it was just this whole great.
Which
thing.
I feel like doesn't really exist too much anymore. That's why when he did this, I'm like, it's gonna not sound good. And I love Denzel Curry's albums. He's such a great hip hop artist. And I think he did this album really good. It sounds really good. Like in my opinion, as far as Southern hip hop goes, I think he did a really good job on this album. So I would check it out if you're a Denzel Curry fan or a Southern hip hop fan. I would check that album out. Vince Staples, another one of my guys, came out with Dark Times. I love Vince Staples. His albums are a little bit hit or miss. I mean, what was the album he did? Summer 03 is the name of the album. Was his first album, whatever that album was. That was an amazing album. That was the album that turned me on to him. He was really, really good album. He's a West Coast guy, but he puts out really good stuff. This album is really good. Really enjoyed it. A lot of really good tracks. He only, he maybe has a couple albums that I think fell short. A lot of his albums are really good. This one is definitely one to check out. Lupe Fiasco's Samurai. Oh man, dude, this one took me back. I was like, this is like, I think it's like an 8 album track, which I hate. I hate when artists do that, but he kills it on every track. This is like Lupe at his finest.
Quality over quantity.
Oh,
he's such an interesting like cat because he really is. He preaches this. He's into kendo big time.
Yeah,
he's nasty. Like he's a real martial artist, athlete.
Oh yeah.
And he's also like they just picked him up for some. I forget where he's teaching, but he's going to be now teaching one of these like Harvard level universities, in a hip hop like college course. Like he's picking up a residency teaching music. Like, imagine you have Lupe Fiasco as your
That's pretty crazy.
As your teacher.
That's pretty crazy.
I don't know, oh man, maybe he posted about it or something, but I just read that the other day, and just like,
that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, he just it's like great to see it because like somebody like him, I loved him in high school, and like, it's cool to see these guys like flourishing and evolving and like still doing stuff that you like now, but like, I'm like, oh, it reminds me of what I used to like about him, but he's in a different place, and he's it's just like, you're just like, yeah, get it. Like it's
Well, I use him as the example of breaking through commercially with conscious hip hop because it's like, all this conscious hip hop in the 2000s existed underground, but everything commercial was like this overinflated garbage, really. And then you had Lupe who came out and kind of like took that style of conscious hip hop and kind of somehow got it onto the radio. He
also made like All of Us skateboard.
Yeah. Well,
he made my whole neighborhood start skateboarding. Like we're just we're all gonna skate.
Dude, that song was huge. It was big.
Yeah, I mean it changed. It made it like, I don't know. He did a lot in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
Yeah, he's really good. Samurai is great. Like I said, it's only an 8-track album or whatever, but it's still almost every song he kills it on every song. He did a really good job on this one. My next one is my boy Boldy James puts out 2 tracks. I think he actually got a third, two albums. I think he actually got a third album before the end of the year. I tried to listen to it a little bit, but I don't think it really compares to these first 2. The first one was Penalty of Leadership, which was good. Across the Tracks was the second one. Across the Tracks is phenomenal. I would say if you're gonna listen to a Boldy James album from this year, Across the Tracks is the one to go. I think he kills it on that one. Boldy James is one of these guys. Like I said, he's in it for the sport. Like this guy is you get the attention of Alchemist. Obviously, he's doing the right thing, but he's got the cadence, he's got the voice, he's got the flow, he's got the lyrics. He is one of the great lyricists as far as like that gangster rap goes, and that like people who want to listen to good hip hop that's not not super conscious, just good hip hop, good lyricist. He's the guy to go to. He's got it right now. He's one of my favorites as far as that style goes. Boldy James, Across the Tracks. I would definitely try to listen to. My next one I got is Ka, The Thief Next to Jesus. Probably one of Ka's best works. I've been listening to him for a while, and he was also one of these guys, super conscious, but like his cadence is also a little bit, just the way his cadence is a little bit boring. Like it's a little bit too monotone. It's not engaging enough, I'd say. I think he did a really good job on this album. I mean, whoever he uses to produce, his beats are always on point, but this album I think is where he's really, and he's been at it for a while now on the underground scene. I want to say probably like 10 years where I've been listening to him come out with albums every now and then. He's always done a really good job. This one is probably his best work. Like abstract conscious hip hop, he does a really good job. Elucid, I have it number 10 with Revelator. That's one half of Arm & Hammer. He does Arm & Hammer with Billy Woods. Elucid's another great album. Yeah, he's got killer tracks on all this. I mean, you have to like his style. Like he's another one like Kyle, where if you don't really like that style, it's hard to get into. But Elucid does a really great job. Again, Elucid's one of those guys. It's like poetry. He does a really good job with his lyrics and his flow. The cadence. For some reason though, I don't know, Elucid, the beats he chooses, I'm not a huge fan of the beats. They have like, his beats have like a specific sound to them that doesn't really appeal to me as much. But he's a great lyricist. As Arm & Hammer, I think they put out way better albums as Arm & Hammer than Elucid or Billy Woods does solo. But again, Elucid I'm putting him in number 10 because it's a great album. Got to hear Revelator. You're into good hip hop, you got to listen to Revelator. It's a must. So that's going to be my top 10 for hip hop. We'll go into probably your least favorite genre now is country, but one of my favorite genres as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. You have Zach Bryan on there.
I do have Zach Bryan on. Zach Bryan's one of my favorites, though.
I just don't know it. Yeah. I don't know it. I'm not like you where I'm so open minded where I mean you listen to everything and like I don't take this analytical approach to music where I just haven't been exposed to it, and I guess I have implicit bias and I just haven't really dove in. I'm not saying I don't like country music. Like I know there's mad good country music, especially like I like old country music for sure. But I haven't listened to. I have like pretext. It's just like what someone would say about hip hop, like, oh, they're rapping about guns or whatever, city people. I have that same like New Yorker thing with country where I'm like, they're just a bunch of like, I don't know. They got their own thing going on, and I can't relate to it.
There's
a wall.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I'm putting up a wall.
I explained to it.
It's immature.
We talked about like there's a stigma attached to every genre, right?
Of course, yeah. So
and then like to get past that stigma, you either got to listen to it or you just stick with it.
Never
and just
listen
don't.
and
Which is fine.
you're missing
never
out
do
on.
it. Listen, I had this conversation with people who don't listen to country all the time, and it's always the same thing. Oh, I could listen to Johnny Cash and country from the 60s and 70s. He's like, but the new country, I just can't do it. It's just, I can't relate, and they're just blah, 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 blah. And the funny part about having that conversation with people is I hated, and I love Johnny Cash, and I remember when I got into like 60s and 70s country and how happy I was to hear that. I hated any country that had come out basically from like the 80s on.
I thought it was.
I hated it.
I always thought it was like very like poppy. It'd be like, I'm in my truck, and I'm like, this is corny.
And
you know, like I don't want to listen to that.
And it still is on the radio.
Yeah. See, I'm not getting the other stuff. That's
so
the problem.
this is what I try to. So like I'll have, and a lot of people like hip hop too. I'll have this conversation like, I can't listen. Oh, it's so blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I said okay. I was like, but you love hip hop, of course. But I was like, you listen to hip hop on the radio? Like, no, of course not. I said okay. So imagine that the only hip hop you were ever exposed to was what's on the radio right now.
You wouldn't like it.
Of course.
Yep.
So that's like, listen.
So I guess I gotta go through.
You still might not like country, but all I'm trying to tell you is if you don't like country because of what you hear on the radio or see on TV, I don't like any of that either. I think that all that's garbage.
It's not
it's
a good gauge
concept. No, and honestly, the same situation. I mean, you could put the same situation to hip hop. People would be like, "Oh, I hate hip hop." It's like, yeah, because you're only exposed to what you're hearing on the radio. If you heard of, and that was me. Like I said, I was not listening to hip hop because all I was exposed to was garbage hip hop, and I was like, I'm done with it. I wrote it off. I'm not listening to hip hop, and I'll listen to '90s hip hop, and maybe some early 2000s type of stuff.
Some things from my youth that I enjoyed.
But I was like, I'm not wasting
gonna
my
write
time
off
on
a
new hip hop.
genre.
It's all bad.
Yeah.
But if you know how to get that, if you know how to, what's out there and know how to listen to it, and that's why I try to kind of like, listen, if you can't sit here and tell me, well, I can listen to Johnny Cash or I can listen to Waylon Jennings or guys from the 60s and 70s, but I can't listen to new country. It's like, no. You're telling me you can listen to new country, the good new country. You just haven't heard it yet or haven't taken the time.
Yeah.
And I had the same, because that was me. I didn't listen to country. I thought it was all garbage. I couldn't listen to it. And the one album that I happened to stumble across, or else I probably still wouldn't listen to country if I didn't stumble across this album, was Sturgill Simpson's Meta Modern Sounds in Country Music. I remember like just coming across it online somewhere, people saying it was like a great country album. I'm like, all right, and I put it on. I remember listening. I'm like, this is really good. Like, this is good. This is like I'm listening to country music. This is real country music. This is good. Like, and then like, I remember trying to tell people about that and like, no, but you got to listen to the new, and I'm like, dude, that's almost like not even country. It's like some type of Southern pop. Like, you're not listening to country. It's like a pop. It's just some weird thing that evolved from, I guess, country music, but it really doesn't sound like it to me. Yeah. So listen, I'm not.
Well, what do you got? I mean, I'm not going to have much pretext to these things.
No. I don't expect any pretext. But if you do want to listen, I'm going to listen.
I'm going to listen to all this. I feel like I have to. Also, I feel like I have been very pigeonholed with music lately. This will be good to just kind of.
Like I said, listen. You could sit and listen to Bob Dylan. You could sit and listen to one of these albums. So it's not that hard. I'm putting number one. Zach Bryan's The Great American Bar Scene. I'm a huge Zach Bryan fan. I don't even think this is his best album. I still think American Heartbreak is his best album, but this album is also amazing to me. It's hard to put anything above it. The guy is extremely skilled, especially for his age, to be putting out stuff this great at his age. I don't know, he's 29 maybe. It's just he's come really far, and he continues to put out good music, and he continues to not go commercial, which is great too, because somebody with his type of following right now, he can easily go commercial and completely sell out, and he hasn't done it. He just keeps putting out good music. Gotta listen to The Great American Bar Scene. I got number two, Johnny Blue Skies. I don't even know how to say the name of the album because it's Passage du Desir. I don't. Johnny Blue Skies is another name that Sturgill Simpson came up with for whatever reason. This guy loves to do concept albums, and I love hearing him. I mean, he does a great job on this one. Sounds more like what's the name of that album now? Well, I can't remember the name of the album, but it's like when he did Metamon Sounds of Country Music, that was like a country music album. That was amazing, flawless, one of his best album. And then he went on to do a lot of other concept type albums. He's a very skilled guy. He did a soundtrack for some type of anime movie. He's gone in so many different directions. He's done cover albums for artists. The guy is skilled beyond belief. This album shows it too. I think it's not a lot of tracks, if I remember, maybe 8 to 10 tracks, but they're longer songs. They're like 7 to 8 minute songs. So he does a really good job at showing their musical talent on this album. So just another concept album by him where he kills it. Sturgill Simpson, one of my all-time favorites. Number 3, I got Charley Crockett, a guy nobody listens to, which is crazy because this guy is so good. He's such a unique style, such a unique voice. He came out with 2 albums, did a double feature, $10 Cowboy and Visions of Dallas. $10 Cowboy is, I would say, is a little bit better than Visions of Dallas, but still, both albums amazing. Got to check out Charley Crockett, $10 Cowboy, amazing album. Number 4, I got Pony Bradshaw, Thus Spoke the Fool. So it's so funny because Pony Bradshaw came out with an album last year, and it was like, I remember listening to it like, this guy's got such potential. I love the songs on here, but it wasn't a great album. I don't even know if maybe I put it in my top 10 because I liked it so much. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look. This album, oh my God, to show the steps that this guy took now, like I've been playing this album, I think all week long.
In a year.
And it just works out like that with these guys. That's what I'm saying. This genre is just flourishing right now. Country music is like in a renaissance period where it's come back from the 70s and it's just unbelievable. And Pony Bradshaw, this album, he really kills it on. This is a must listen for anyone who likes country music. Thus Spoke the Fool. Gotta check out Pony Bradshaw. Number 5, I have Jesse Daniels, Countin' the Miles. I always love Jesse Daniels. I think this is another great Jesse Daniel album. It's all his albums are very similar. I don't think he's taken a major step forward or a major step back. It's just another solid Jesse Daniel album, and I love his sound. I think he does a really great job. Number 6, 49 Winchester. This band has been on the up and coming. Really great country band that's been slowly climbing the ladder, and I think this is their best work. Leavin' This Holler. Great album. I really like the way they're going. I hope they even take a further step next year, but they're in the right direction. This is definitely their best work so far. 49 Winchester. Got to listen to Leavin' This Holler. 7, I got Wyatt. So Wyatt Flores. It's funny. I'd actually almost want to move this album up. He came out with 2 albums this year. Half-Life in the beginning of the year, and then towards the end of the year, he came out with Welcome to the Plains. So the story that with Wyatt Flores, which I didn't know until after I heard his first EP, which I really liked, was Charles Wesley Godwin had him as his opener, and and Charles Wesley Godwin before that was Zach Bryan's opener. So how it worked was you had Zach Bryan with Charles Wesley Godwin open up for him, which I saw live in Queens, which was a great show a couple of years ago. I seen Charles Wesley Godwin open up for Zach Bryan, which was amazing. And then Charles Wesley Godwin went on his own tour and had Wyatt Flores open up for him. Now Wyatt Flores is putting out his own albums, which, whatever they're doing, it's working. Half-Life was a good album. It fell short of what I thought the EP sounded like, what I thought he was going to put out. Although the funny part is the song Milwaukee on the album might be my favorite country song of the year. I think Milwaukee is a great song. The rest of the album is kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some hit or miss. It's a very short album too. I think it's like another 8-track album, which again, I hate when people do that because I feel like it's like, I don't know, you're putting up the bare minimum. Welcome to the Plains came out. This I thought was phenomenal. I think it's a lot better than Half-Life and really shows work that's different from what he'd done before. It's different from Half-Life. It's different from the EP he came out with last year. Welcome to the Plains, I think, is phenomenal. So as far as those 2 albums go, I would say Welcome to the Plains is a better album. But again, Wyatt Flores. amazing artist. Got to check out. Up and coming. He's right on that line with Zach Bryan and Charles Weather Godwin coming up. My next guy, number 8, Benjamin Todd's Shooting Star. And it's so funny because this Benjamin Todd guy, I keep coming across online and I could never get into. I wasn't a fan of his work. I honestly didn't even think he was making music anymore. Comes out with Shooting Star, one of my favorite albums this year. It just did such a good job. Yeah, so I would say Benjamin Todd, Shooting Star. Got to check out this album. I'm on him now. He won me over. His best work so far, in my opinion. Number 9, I got Zach Top's Cold Beer and Country Music. And this is such a funny album because it's the only album that people who don't like good country music will actually listen to, because it is the quintessential 90s country music that existed and that I couldn't stand. But listen, it's that style of country and it's great. He kills it. He does a great job.
Wow.
It's one of his songs. It actually talks about how he sounds like the radio of country in the 90s. Like he somehow took 90s country and just was like, I'm going to do it right now and I'm going to make it sound great. And it sounds like if it played, you wouldn't know that it wasn't from the 90s. It's nuts. If you like that style, that Alan Jackson style country music, you got to listen to Zach Top's Cold Beer and Country Music. Great. It's not deep stuff. It's not this super, in-depth country music like the rest of these guys, but it's that quintessential 90s country music. Cold Beer and Country Music is the name of the album. It's exactly what it's talking about. It's great. 10, I got Shane Smith and the Saints Norther. Shane Smith and the Saints have been always making good music. This is definitely some of their better stuff. A lot of the songs on here really caught me off the bat. I think they're doing a really good job on this one. I have them at 10 because I just don't think they've reached the level as the rest of them, but they're still just like really good country music, and I really like this album, especially compared to the rest of their albums. I think they did a good job. Obviously, they were a huge feature in Yellowstone. Forget the guy's name, but the guy who made Yellowstone's like a huge fan of Shane Smith. So they were featured in Yellowstone a million times. They're a really good band. I think Norther's a really good album. And that will close out my top 10 for country. What can we go into next? All right, so the rest of these, actually, I could do a good one. I got a top 10 on dance music only because obviously, I'm a big fan of dance music, electronic music, and house music, and stuff like that. So I'll run through these quick. I know these next genres aren't going to be a huge favorite for a lot of people as far as genres go. So I'll run through them quick. So my top 10 for dance, I got Jamie XX is In Waves. I love that album. I bought it on vinyl right away. Number 2, Floating Points Cascade. I love everything Floating Points does. He's really amazing.
I think I bought that.
Cascade, amazing album. I don't even know if I bought it. I think I might have tried to, and I couldn't find it online.
Yeah, I don't know.
3, I got Salute, True Magic. Great album. Love it. This is a new guy who's come out. Just really killing it. I love that album. So 4, I have Charley XCX's Brat, which is funny because this was the album that everybody wanted to talk about this whole summer, the whole Brat summer stuff, which I thought was so lame. But I think she actually did a really good job on this album. It's kind of like one of those things where I actually really like the sound she created. And I actually really wasn't a fan of Charley XCX's stuff before this. I always thought it was like subpar pop dance music. I think she did a really good job on this one. I think it deserves the hype it got. Usually I don't say that because I don't think that, artists that are thrown into the spotlight like that, I think she did a really good job on this album. I think she deserves everything, all the acclimates she got from this. I think she deserves it. 5, Alex Anwaters, Dine Presocio, really good album. 6, I got Juliana Gatas, Macalada en la Cama, I believe it's called. don't speak the language, but it was a really great album as far as dance music goes. 7, I got Justice's Hyperdrama. I love a Justice album. I think they did a really good job on this one. 8, Kelly Lee Owens' Dream State. Sounded very different from her older stuff, which I still liked, but I think she did a really good job on this one. I think she went a little bit outside her boundaries and really dominated the other genres she touched upon. 9, I got to go with DJ Sabrina, the teenage DJ. She came out with 2 albums, actually, Sorcery and Hex. Sorcery is a really great album. Hex is pretty good too, but Sorcery is really the one you should focus on. She does a really... her style or his, I don't even know if it's a man or a woman, to be honest with you. They're one of those people who kind of try to keep everything concealed, so I don't know. But they do an amazing job on their house music. They have that style of house music that's much different from anything that's coming out, and they do a really good job at really mastering it. And then I got Remy Wolf's Big Ideas. I loved Remy Wolf's last album. She does really good albums. She's very good at making dance albums. I think she's all over the place. Pop, R&B, dance. She did a really good job with this one too. For just pop, that's non-dance pop and not rock pop. Magdalena Bay put out another amazing album, Imaginal Disc. So it's kind of, I guess, like a synth pop album, I guess you would call it. Not exactly dance, but electronic pop type album. Obviously an amazing album. They always put out really good stuff though. Father John Misty's Mashama. It's like impossible to say. It's like a 13-letter word or whatever. But he does a really good job on this one. Again, this was one of my favorite artists of his style years ago. I mean, his early stuff was really amazing to me, and then I think his last couple albums he started to fall off, but this one actually brings him back. I think he did a really good job on this one. A must check out for like a softer pop. I think it's like they call it like Baroque pop type albums where it's like such soft rock it's hard to even call it rock. It's kind of like Baroque pop type style, but it's really good. Number 3, giving it to Billie Eilish. Hit Me Hard and Soft, another one where I think you got to give her credit. I think this is actually her best work. I wasn't really a fan of her before this album. This album, I think she's really, you know, hitting her mark and doing her best work.
People love Billie Eilish.
I know. She's one of the few where she's on the radio, and actually I think she actually puts out really good work. Number 4, I got Ali X's Girl With No Face. She did a really good job with this kind of synth pop or electro pop type album. Some really good sounds. Probably some of her best work. I've heard a lot of other stuff. I think this might be some of her best work. Number 5, I have The Marias, Submarine. Another really good album. If you want to check out some just really good pop, some dancey tracks on it, but a lot of it is just mostly pop stuff, not as much dance stuff. And then my top 5 for R&B. My number 1, I got No Worries Why Lord. It's just, these guys are awesome. I love their stuff. This album is really good. It's their second album together. They did a really good job. 2, I got Raven Lenae's Bird's Eye. I really like this one. I liked her last album too. I think she gets underplayed. People like don't like her stuff as much. I'm not sure why. I kind of like really like her. I think she's really talented. 3, I got Kali Uchis's Orquídeas. I don't know how to say any of this stuff, man. But that's a really good album as well. I really like a lot of her stuff. I think she's really talented. 4 is Ravina, Where the Butterflies Go in the Rain. I thought was a really good album. 5, I got Brittany Howard's What Now, which I think is a very good album. A lot of different sounds on that one. She really meshed together her, R&B with blues and funk and all these different sounds. I think she did a really good job on that. All right, so we got through all my top 10s, top 5s.
There it is. I have my homework cut out for me.
Everyone does, I think, now, right? Everyone's good for another couple weeks.
I know. Well, it's funny. You got to listen to a lot of those like more than once, obviously, too. So then you're gonna like some, and then
Yeah, I mean, you could do this for. It's funny. Like I was trying to like challenge myself. Like, no, I'm gonna do a top 10 for rock, and then like you start just listening to albums forever, and I'm like, there's no point in doing this. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm like, I can't. If I can't find something I like, I'm just doing a top 5.
No jazz.
You know what's funny? I thought about it.
Next
I thought
year.
about it. It's maybe I'll start doing the jazz. It's hard, man, because the jazz is just such. It's such a genre that really almost nobody I know listens to, unless they're listening to like older jazz. But like nobody ever comes to me with like a new jazz album, so it's like almost like I feel like I'd be wasting my time. And to be honest with you, it's not something I proactively go out to try and look for new jazz music, only because I feel like I'm so uneducated on older jazz music that it's like doesn't make sense. Like you know,
Yeah, it
what I
makes
mean?
it hard to.
So it's like,
be
yeah, let me find
objective
this
about
new
it.
jazz album. It's like I should really be listening to the old stuff first, but again, it's like there's only so many hours in the day.
I know, like
what am
how
I gonna
many
listen to?
albums did you? How many albums did you listen to this year to even get this list? Like thousands.
A lot, yeah. You gotta listen to a lot. But that's the thing. On a weekly basis, I'm looking for new music.
Yeah.
So like I'm constantly like, all right, what's out there that's new? Like I'm constantly going on the websites trying to find new stuff. So it's just one of those things that I'm always on top of, you know. Like I know that nobody else does that. I don't think that everybody else does what I'm doing. I understand that, but at least if I'm doing it, maybe it benefits others. You know, they see the top 10.
Well, yeah, you're doing all the research. It's like when you go on
I'm doing
one of
it
these
for fun.
Consumer Reports websites and you got to buy your new microwave. It's like, he already checked all the microwaves. This is the best one. Same idea. Now I don't need to search around if I want to listen to pop music, you know?
Well, I
I
don't
could
think
just look.
anyone should not search around. I think like if you don't like, it's a place to start. It's a place to start. Like that's what I.
Yeah, it's like anything else. I mean, music's
know?
like one of those things where it's interesting because it's such a, like almost everyone listens to music, and it's like there's so many different levels of how much of a listener you are,
Sure.
but not many people are doing. It's almost like cars. Like most people just get a car and drive it around,
Yeah.
and they like the car, and they're like whatever. And then some people are obsessed with cars and
Right.
build cars, and it's
Yeah,
like, this is the thing with this music. It helps to have people doing the research and having the history and knowing about the things to like give you an educated kind of starting point, because the amount of knowledge and time and energy spent into like being able to give people real comprehend like lists like this that are coming from a point of knowledge is, you know, you need to put the time in. And
Yeah.
everyone's not going to put the time in,
Yeah.
right? Like people are not going to sit on the internet and search
No,
through albums. Like,
but I mean,
so it definitely helps that. It helps me, you know.
yeah. I mean, and that's all it really is. I mean, obviously, I do this for fun, and like,
Yeah, you
I feel
enjoy
like it's
it.
kind of like I get enjoyment when like I can like tell somebody else about an album. And they're like, you know what? I listened to that. That was like a really good album.
Yeah.
Because I know how it feels for me to find an album
Mm-hmm.
that's like, this is great. Like if I could do that for somebody else, like I want you to have that same experience.
Such a nice
You know what I
feeling.
mean? Like
Yeah.
where you could be like, I'm playing this on repeat. Like this is great. Like
Yeah,
this
this is
was
awesome.
You know what I mean? And also the thing that bothers me is like it's just not easy to find it nowadays. And I think a lot of people have trouble with that. Like it's like I'll know about these artists and albums that people will never be exposed to or be able to find or listen to. So it's like if I can give them that little like passageway, like, hey, you got to listen to this, you know, it's kind of like it's cool to have them be able to have that information and be able to use it and then, you know, actually get something out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I had it. I mean, obviously there's no way, like, obviously the only reason I have this now is because of the internet, because like I said, I stopped listening to hip hop in the 2000s. I never listened to country because everything I was exposed to was garbage. And like those experiences of me coming back and listening to new hip hop and then me actually listening to new country, like now I'm like, oh, there's stuff out. Like there's stuff out. Like there's no bad genre. There's just bad artists of the genre.
Yeah,
But there
of
are
course.
good genre. Like I try to tell people, there's no bad genres. There's just you think a genre is bad, you just haven't heard the artists that are putting out the good music of that genre yet.
Yeah.
You know, because if you did, you'd know that it's
like,
an amazing genre. So that's just the way that I look at it now. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I have like a passion that, you know, nobody else is going to be able to match, but if I can just get a little bit of information out there, just change the way somebody thinks about something, or says, all right, yeah, look, listen, I listened to the podcast. I heard you talk about this album. I had to listen to it. Like, you know what I mean? Most of the time, and that's the thing with music too. Most of the time, I'll text people all the time, yo, you got to listen to this album. They like never listen to it. Like, so just.
I think people think it's like a commitment thing. I don't know,
but it's
like.
And I'm the other way around. If somebody was like, "Oh, yo, listen to this album," and I never heard it, I'll get angry. I'll be like, "How did I?" I'm like, "All right, I gotta listen. I'll
yeah, like I better like, how did I fall off?
Yeah,
what's going on?"
And it happens too. People will send me like YouTube videos of bands, and be like, "I never heard of this." I'm like, "I gotta." This guy's fell through the cracks. Like, I kind of get like angry that like I didn't. Like I should have heard of this guy.
I'm supposed
like
to
I
be on
missed
top
this
of
one.
this.
Like people are listening to this and I'm not. Like
people are enjoying this so much. I feel left out.
How did I miss this? Like, and you get pissed about it a little bit, but no, it's good. I like when people send me stuff. You know, people try to show me up, and it's like, yo, show me up. You know what I mean? Like, try to teach me something I don't know. You know, that's what the conversation is for. Right? It's got to go both ways, you know. You if I can show you something, you can show me something. I don't know everything, you know. Like people will see my collection and hear me talk about music, like, "Oh, this guy's listened to everything." Like, no, it's impossible. First of all, it's like an endless hole, just so you know. Like you could go your entire life listening to music all day long and never come close.
Yeah, that's true.
To listening to all of it. I'm telling you, even if you go into like classic rock, it's like, well, everybody's heard of all the classic. I'm telling you right now, there's bands in that era that people have not heard of. Like a lot of them. Like not even just like a couple. There's a lot of great music that was made that people have never heard of or may never have. Or not even that. Not even that. How about this? So this is something that I've learned because I used to be like, when I started listening to classic rock, I started listening. I forget how I was getting the songs. I think I was getting like a lot of the songs. I think what had happened was, so 104.3 does, or I don't even know if they still do this because I don't listen to the radio, but they used to do every Thanksgiving they would do the top 1,043 songs of the classic rock era, and they would and they would just play them. I guess they knew how to time it to where like they would end at Thanksgiving, like, you know, they knew, I don't know how many days
they must know, like, I need
to play
like,
1,043 songs,
64 hours.
I would think it took
something.
like 2 weeks or something to do all that.
Yeah.
But they would, starting at 1,043 and all the way down to the greatest song of classic rock at Thanksgiving or the day before Thanksgiving, whatever, and I'm not sure. And I think that's like, they kind of like posted it online, and I remember like looking it up, like, oh, these are the greatest songs of all time. And it's funny because like, if you do that or just base your classic rock listening off like what they would play on 104.3, like I did my entire life growing up, because that was basically my only way to listen to classic rock, you don't realize that they're only playing like one or two songs from every album of every artist. Like, you're not listening to the whole album. Like, these albums were amazing from front to back, but you're not listening to all those other songs.
No.
You know what I mean?
And I mean, also, you're not listening to them in the context where they're in a certain order.
Well, that too.
Right? You're having that whole listening experience.
Which is huge for bands like Pink Floyd.
100%.
That made David Bowie, that made concept albums that now you're only listening to
or
a
MF
piece of the story.
Food.
Right.
You know, that stuff is meant to be listened to in a. So many of those hip hop albums that I loved when I was younger too, where it's like the whole crazy storyline throughout the album.
Oh yeah.
I always was like, well, do you know Yellow Wolf?
I've heard of him. I've never.
He's like this. I guess he's Southern rapper.
Okay.
You know, people compare him to Eminem. I think Shady signed him at some time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and then he got like, it was like the typical thing. He got like, in my opinion, got like kind of his shit just wasn't as good. He had Trunk Music. That album was really sick.
Okay.
That was his one that like put him on the map. But before that, he was doing mixtapes.
Right.
Like everybody else. I think one is Creek Water. And that one's cool. Kind of storytelling-ish. But he did like a whole album that was like Talladega Nights. Called like
they used to do that crazy mixtape.
Yeah, like the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and the album starts like he's like falling asleep, and his boy calls him, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not trying to chill. I'm about to cut this movie on, whatever." And he's like smoking or something, and he's like falling asleep in the album, and he's like, "Oh man, I wonder what it would be like to be Ricky Bobby." And then like he's like kind of Ricky Bobby in the whole album, and it's like. It's so weird. And then he did another one where he took all classic rock.
Yeah.
And it's all classic rock samples. Like, you know, like Leonard Skinner and stuff. And all these great songs. But, like, he kind of samples it, but also sings a little. But it's, like, great. But they're all, like, you can't even listen to them on, like, they're not on Spotify because they're like, totally, like, copyright.
Right.
So they like exist only in my world on like YouTube.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
But I like love
Which
them.
still doesn't make sense. It would still be copyrighted on YouTube.
Yeah, it's
right?
just so weird. But they're like, yo, there's a couple of songs and like, I mean, he does like Brick in the Wall. Is that Pink Floyd?
Yeah, another brick.
Yeah, another Brick in the Wall. But it's like a hip hop version of that, and I'm just like, this is fucking awesome. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's like. Yeah,
well, we were talking
I don't
about
know.
concept albums.
Well, it's like concept albums and listening in order. They're like, I love that. It's just like a weird story, and you're like, this is so. It's such a fun way to, you know, to listen to music. I find, I mean, that's how music has changed a lot. And listening, like we've talked about this before, like how the record is supposed to be listened to in a certain order. You know, and you have singles, of course, and stuff, but it's like now it's like the way I listen to music 90% of the time, like I'm very bad. Like I'll listen to like one song and I hop around a lot.
Well, so I mean,
You know.
I do that too because, especially if it's like an artist that I'm not familiar with. Like if I'm gonna get familiar with this artist, give me your best stuff first. I don't want to just
let me see like what's gonna hook me.
I don't want to
right?
pan through an album that might not be good. I want to hear your best song first, and then I'll go from there. Or give me your best. I'll do top 4, 5, whatever. Like I'll try to listen to their best stuff, and then like if I like it, then I'll start listening.
Now
to
I'll
the whole
just
album,
maybe
like, but as far as like I mean you can't. I don't think anyone should really dedicate themselves to that. I mean, listen, you want to be the type of guy who listens to an album from front to back, and I'm the type of guy who doesn't like to waste my time. So I'm like, if I'm going to listen to all this music, I'm not just going to like, let me start at the first track. Like, who knows if the album's going to be good? Listen, the chances of the entire album being amazing are pretty slim anyway. Like, you know what I mean? There's only so many albums that come out like that where you could say, like, every album is really great. Every song on the album is really great. Like, you know what I mean? And I'll say that for the new Cure album. I think you can definitely listen to that album from front to back. I think every song is really great on that album. But there's really only 8 tracks, first of all. And second of all, you're not going to find that. So, like, I don't know. Like, even if all the songs are good, right? Like, the chances of knowing that beforehand, I guess, especially for an artist that you're not familiar with, I think it's crazy. I don't know. I think you have to dip your toe in the water before you commit. Because, like, if their best song, you don't like it, you're probably not going to like the rest of their stuff. Like, the
you go to the
chances you
restaurant,
like the rest of their stuff.
you try the best thing on the menu that it's known for. I'm here for the fried chicken.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I really like this place. They probably do,
Yeah, I mean,
burger's
you
probably
have
good.
the whole thing of getting into an artist is not just listening to their whole album from front to back. Give something a taste. Oh, I like this. Okay, listen to a little bit more. You listen to a little bit more. Next thing you know, you're listening to the whole album from front to back, and you love it. But it's not always the case with everybody, so I wouldn't say you have to do that.
Maybe with vinyl, it's more of a thing because it's like
but think about
almost too much trouble to
But
hop
think about
around.
it. No,
right?
it's not that. Think about it. You're not buying vinyl unless you love the album. You know what I mean? I'm not listening to one song off an album and be like, I'm buying it on vinyl.
Yeah, the
I'm
concept
I'm
of
buying
the
the
vinyl
album
is-
because I know the whole album's great. You
Yeah.
can listen to it from front to back. It's a great album. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
gonna,
true.
you know what I mean? That's different. And I don't think many people are. I don't think many people. I mean, I've bought albums from artists I love before I heard the album, like pre-ordered them, and sometimes it doesn't even work out. Like it's still a hit or miss. Like your favorite artist could put out a bad album, and now you have it on vinyl, and the album sucks. I mean, it is what it is. But you gotta dip your toe in a little bit if you're doing it with an artist you don't really listen to. You gotta try it out a little bit first. I'd say, you know what I mean. Not even to say like people. That's a people. Like, did you listen to all these albums? I'm like, I mean, most of them from front to back. No, because I haven't opened all of them. But a lot of them, I like the artist. A lot of them, it's. I'm given the opportunity to buy something that can't be had, or it's at a low price, or whatever it is. But most of the time, when I'm out buying vinyl and I see an album, I'm buying an album that I already love. So I've heard the album already, but yeah, there's a lot of these that are unopened. I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Do you have any? How many around would you say you have of like I have a decent amount of albums that are like movie soundtracks.
Yeah, I've got soundtracks.
I have some game soundtracks. I
don't have any game soundtracks, but I have a bunch of movie soundtracks. But most of them, or almost all of them, I haven't bought. A lot of those was inherited through collections where people gave me their collection and they had like 5-6 soundtracks in there.
Yeah, that always seems like something you pick out at stuff like that, right? Or like cheap at a. Yeah, I have like the Empire
I don't think the
Strikes Back or
soundtracks. I mean,
something,
unless it's like a really great soundtrack.
Oh, maybe yeah, like a Star Wars. I got like.
I know, like the 2001 Space Odyssey one is the one that people really love.
I mean, that's like I got that. That's sick. Stuff like that is like
that crazy guy that showed up to my yard sale.
Whoa.
That was pretty funny.
The
funny part was he actually pulled out that album, which I thought was funny because I was like, I thought the guy was a crazy person. He's like, you would want 2000 Space Odyssey on vinyl. And I'm like, dude, I already have it, but you should definitely buy that. I'm like, I know this guy seems like a nut job.
Yeah, but it's a good album.
Yeah.
I forget what I just bought. There was some, I think it was on Amazon, but it was a cartoon, American animation.
I would have to find. I've moved these around so many times. I'm actually gonna have to buy another shelf because I'm running out.
I feel like your recollection of like, you're so good at remembering the names of all these things.
Oh, dude, I screwed
don't know
up
how you do it.
6
I'm like,
times on this podcast. I
just
couldn't
bought
remember
this-
the name of an album.
I mean,
wanted to
listen,
remember the name of.
you're human. It's like I can't remember that I just bought this vinyl. I don't remember the name of the show I bought the vinyl from, and I watched the entire show. But I really liked it. But I guess I didn't like it that much. But it's some sci-fi. But it was a very like, it's one of those shows where you're watching it and you're like, the music is really, the animation's amazing, but the music is really what's doing this right now. Like, this is like really setting a tone.
Yeah.
And then you listen to the album and you're kind of like, I put it on the other day and I'm like, all right, like maybe I need to own this. Like, the music's really great with the animation together. Like, it really, you almost like miss it. You're like, oh, I want to watch this episode again. Not like, but it's fun to have stuff like that. And also, you know what got me? The art on the outside. They did a cool thing where they like die cut multiple layers. So when you insert the record insert, it like shows the background and the front's like trees and stuff. So it looks like it gives you this like 3D landscape thing. There's like a foreground, middle ground, background. So I'm like, this is like a real piece of art. Like, I want to like own this. You know, like.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. I don't like. It's funny because when people give me I don't think that most soundtracks are worth like nothing because unless it's like some really critically acclaimed soundtrack that like people really love, like it's like a famous type of soundtrack.
Yeah, it's like John Williams. You want like have all John. Like I want like Jurassic Park. I want like Jaws.
Yeah, no, but I mean for the most part, like I can't. I also like I don't want to get rid of them because I feel like it's like this. I don't know. I just feel like it's like a part of history that's like I'm like, it's cool to I don't know, kind of collect the soundtracks, right? Like it's this music and movie mix.
Yeah, it's like a great film, like a special. 2001: Space Odyssey.
Yeah, well, I mean that's an.
Also, like I don't want to own. That's my way of owning. Like I don't personally collect any media except vinyl.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not gonna buy 2001: Space Odyssey on DVD.
Well,
I'm hoping to
DVDs
stream
are
it. If I
almost-
want to see it, I'm going online
Yeah.
and purchasing or looking at on Netflix or something. So it's like that's my way of like kind of owning like a part of 2001: Space Odyssey and like keeping it in my home, and I could kind of get like the feeling of it when I want it.
Right.
It's available to me to like be transported to that in my living room. Thinking of the monkeys hitting the obelisk with a bone. Did I tell? I mean, years ago, I went to Museum of the Moving Image, and we went to. There was a screening. It was the original, I guess, Super 8, or whatever they shot it in.
I don't know.
Whatever that type of film is.
Okay.
It was like an original reel of the film, and there was a talk. They did a whole thing at the museum, and they had all the costumes. They had all the dioramas, all the exchange letters with like Virgin Airlines, like all like the various things, like the Hilton Group. We're going to use your name in this movie. We're creating a new line of fake furniture that they use in the future for Hilton. Insane, like mind-boggling. And then before they show the movie, 4 people come out, and it was like the director's daughter, the guy that plays the monkey in that first scene, like that dude that was like the monkey that like realizes and becomes like sentient, and then the guy that's the main astronaut in the film, and they're like sitting there right in front of me, and it was like a $30 ticket. It was like the coolest thing I've ever done. Like it was
Wild.
It was wild. We need to go to the museum for the moving image. Like we should keep an eye on it.
That's
It's kind of
crazy.
far. It's in like Long Island City, so it's
I
kind
feel
of
like
a pain.
stuff like that happens all the time and nobody realizes.
In New York, especially, there's just like so much stuff. But I was like, this is wild right now. Like this is the best way. Like I'd never get an opportunity like that. Like people that were in the film, the original costumes, seeing the
that's
film.
nuts.
I mean, like what a special night, you know? Like
Yeah.
just like seeing these bands live, you know. I'll never see the Talking Heads, but
Nah, yeah, probably never see Talking Heads live. I don't think they perform anymore.
and I don't know if I'd want to see like whatever version of that would be now. You know, you go see like
I know,
the
that's
Beach
the other
Boys,
thing,
There's
like,
like
people-
3 left, and it's like
People saying they're going to see like classic rock bands now. I'm like, but is it even worth it? I mean, like, you're not getting.
just to check a box. Like, oh yeah, I saw them in 2025. It's like
50
some old
years
guy.
after their prime.
Also like it's funny because like music holds up, right? And like it's also cool because it could be a real kind of like snapshot of what was important at that time period, like
Yeah.
the politics, the wars, and the, you know, they talking about like, but something, it's just like seeing like the Andy Warhol print now, or the you know, that famous like all those Dada sculptures, like the furry cup, and like, you know, Jackson Pollock stuff, and it's like it was like really had a lot of impact then, and now it's like, you know, you're more used to that kind of art.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, it's like it doesn't knock your, but like confuse you and blow your brain, and it's like same thing with that. It's like, you know, you go see Fear of Music like the year it came out, and you're like, "Wah!" You know, it's like it holds up now, but it's not like, it's just a different thing to see it later.
I always think about them. Like, could you imagine seeing these bands like in their prime, like when the album came out? Like, that's gotta be wild.
Or like not even knowing who they are, like just
Yeah.
being like in the, oops, I saw
They were opening
Pink
for somebody
Floyd
else.
was just opening. It's kind of cool, I guess. It's just wild to think about. That's why that's a good argument for like seeing a lot of live music
Oh yeah, yeah. People don't.
with like an open mind and
People-
going, because I mean, I'm very guilty of this a lot of
What?
times. I mean, we have less and less time as we get older to go see concerts, but you know, we'll be like, all right, we're hanging out, it's our chance to catch up before the concert, and we like wait and don't see openers, just because like it's like, all right, what are we gonna go through like 3 or 4 bands I don't really love
Well, here's
and stand up for 4 or 5 hours, and
here's
like,
what I do. I don't ever go to a show.
you check.
I listen to the openers before I go.
That's smart.
Yeah. So I know whether, like, for example, I don't even have to do this because I already know, but I'm going to see the Deftones April. Actually, that's a funny story. Too.
Do they have a new album?
No, but I'm hoping they're gonna drop one because their tour starts this month, I believe. So I'm thinking maybe they'll drop one right before the tour starts. I'm not sure.
See, I want to listen to old Deftones though, and then I'm gonna go on a concert and not.
They'll probably play everything. They're gonna do a huge show. They're dude. First of all,
have I seen them? Maybe.
I don't know. I've never seen them. I actually didn't even get into them until a couple years ago. Every album, I don't think they've ever put out about maybe their first album, but everything after that, their albums are all
I used
amazing.
to love them in college when I was delivering pizza.
They're really good.
I'd just be like driving around.
But I'm going to see them. The funny story with that was, so they're playing at Madison Square Garden and the Prudential Center. And the guys that I go see concerts with, they're debating on which one we should go to. Like, we go to Madison Square Garden, and we can go out in the city before we go. You go to Prudential Center, you can't really. You gotta like tailgate basically. You tailgate, but you can't really go anywhere. But he was like, but the tickets are a lot cheaper for Prudential. They're more expensive for Madison Square Garden. I said, we were like, dude, just buy whatever. I'm like, I don't care, buy whatever. But when I was looking at the dates, I actually only looked at the date for the Madison Square Garden show, which was, I don't know, like April 4th or something. And I never looked at the date for the Prudential Center. He wound up just buying the Prudential Center. I'm like, all right, let me put it on my calendar. Boy, did I get lucky. It's the day before your
rehearsal.
The rehearsal dinner. So your rehearsal dinner is on a Thursday?
Yeah.
It's the Wednesday.
April 10th. You got a fun week.
I was like, what? I'm like,
You're
dude.
booked and busy.
I'm like,
that
I didn't
week,
even
bro.
look. If that was a day later, I'd not be able to go. I'm like,
Damn, that's sick.
And the funny part was he asked us which day works better. And I'm like,
You're
whatever.
Oh, I'm chilling. It's April. I mean, I know, because it's like, what are you doing in April?
No, I knew I had your thing, but I had the date of Madison Square Garden in my mind. I'm like, I'm free that week. I'm like, it's the week before.
Same openers and stuff, right? For both.
So the openers, it's funny, the openers are the Mars Volta and and Fleshwater, which I love Fleshwater.
I don't know about Fleshwater.
Gotta listen to Fleshwater. They're really, really good bands that nobody really... I think it's the guy, and I just learned this from Dantes, that I think the lead singer's side project of Vane FM, if you ever listen to Vane FM. Vane FM's another new band that came out a couple years ago that they have like 2 albums out. They're really good. But apparently this is his side project. It's like a legit 90s new metal band. They sound really good. So the fact that I got to see Mars Volta, which was a band that I've always wanted to see, I thought I'd never be able to see, that were awesome. I get to see Fleshwater too, which is great. So I don't really have to check, to listen to them beforehand. I know I want to see the openers. But normally I would listen. If I haven't heard of them before, I would listen to them and give them the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes it's an artist that I really want to see. And that was the case with Zach Bryan. I had heard of Charles Wesley Godwin, didn't really listen to him. Saw he was opening for Zach Bryan. All right, let me listen to this guy. Start listening to him, get into him a lot, see him live, wind up being one of my favorite country music artists right now. I think Charles Wesley Godwin's amazing. And every album he's done, I think, is amazing. Being so great. Now he ends up being one of my favorites, and I got to see him live, and I got to enjoy it. But I think everyone should do that. I mean, I did it with the last concert we went to. I wasn't a fan of those bands, and I'm not gonna sit through a band that I already know I don't like just to support an opener. I mean, listen.
Yeah,
man,
your ticket price is also supporting the opener.
Yeah, I bought the ticket. I'm there.
You bought the ticket. Yeah, it's fine.
You know what I mean?
You're getting paid. I mean, I know it's a filler crowd and stuff, but I'm not. It's also like it's our leisure.
Listen, I used to say it all the time. Like, I feel so bad for the opener. There's nobody here. Like.
Yeah.
Listen, that's part of the process. Listen,
yeah.
In my opinion, they should be lucky they're opening up for a great band that I came to see.
I always wonder about who I saw, like, when I was in college, and I go to the Chance all the time, because we go to shows, like, constantly, like, just on a Friday or Thursday, because we could just drive to Poughkeepsie, and it was, like, all these, like, metalcore bands and deathcore bands that ended up getting, like, bigger, but I, like, didn't know what I was looking at, and you'd go just because everyone was moshing, and it was, like, you want to get in there as soon as you can. Because it's like a whole, and there'd always be like a couple local bands, and like people show out more for them because they're there to just like beat each other up. Like they just want to go there and dance and like act crazy. Right. And then the real band, Every Time I Die will come on or something, and then you're like, but I mean, we used to go to so many shows, and I was like, I remember getting in there early. We couldn't get a drink because we were too young.
Probably.
So we just like go there and just like get punched in the head for 3 hours and go home. It's like a band I've never heard of. Just headbang
like...
for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Nice bang over just every time. Just fun though.
Now I'm like the old guy at those concerts.
I'm definitely feeling it more when we go.
It's crazy. We've been headbanging at those shows for almost 20 years.
Is that true? I guess so, right? Yeah. When were we
I
going?
mean, my first concert when I was 17, so another 2 years.
When were we going to like all those like Warped Tour things?
Yeah, I started at... So the first one
16,
I went to, I was
17.
17. I drove to Bamboozle. That was my first one.
Did I come with you the first time? Probably.
Who did we go with on the first one? I don't even remember. And then I know I
was the one where I think I wore that I had that one TMX shirt on the whole time, and I got punched in the nose and I had blood all over it. And I only had like one TMX shirt for the whole weekend, and we went home, and then I went to a party, and then we drove out the next day to go to the next day of.
Oh, I don't know.
That was
did we? We did back-to-back.
We did a Saturday and a Sunday or something, and I was just.
I think that's what they used to do. They used to do just Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, but like we went, and I had that same dirty blood-stained shirt on for the whole weekend. Like so stupid.
I just remember the one we all went to was one where Linkin Park headlines.
Yeah.
That was when we had a crew. We had
that was when
8 guys with us or something. That was a lot of us.
So much fun.
That was a fun night. Yeah.
Take It Back Sunday, was that one of those?
Yeah, Take It Back Sunday was it. They
and that was like a crate. I was like, I feel like people are just getting just
I almost died.
by the amount.
I definitely thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
It was pretty...
just like...
Well, no, it wasn't even that. It was you couldn't
surge.
move. It was so packed you couldn't move. You were basically like stuck, and it was like 110 degrees out. So it was like people were passing out, and then people would just lift them up and
get them out of here.
Imagine if I pass out, just lift me up.
You just wake up like in some tent.
In the tent, yeah, basically.
I mean, I'll tell you, when you're so young, you have no money. And I just remember, going into, maybe you have a couple drinks before, right? You tailgate. But then, I wouldn't have enough money to, buy water.
Oh, yeah.
So then the headaches. There's more than one show where I left where I never had a headache that bad ever again. I just felt so horrible. And they give you free energy drinks. Remember that in the show? So you drink 3.
Well, that was.
drinks.
I think we were leaving Warped Tour and they were giving us free rock stars or something.
And I'm like, I'm gonna die. My body's shutting down.
Did you watch the documentary on Woodstock '99? Oh my god!
No, it was the biggest disaster. Right?
Oh, it was. I didn't even know that. I knew there was a Woodstock '99, but I did not know anything about it. I didn't know the details of it. I didn't even know it was a disaster. I just thought it was a festival that happened. I watched that documentary. I'm like, oh my god! I'm like, dude, people died there. It was nuts.
Wow.
Dude, it was crazy.
Just poorly managed.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it was set up from the beginning as very poorly managed. I mean. They had set it up where it was just a money grab. It was really just a money grab. It was how many tickets could we sell at the highest price possible and get the most people here? And they kind of just
who cares?
They didn't try to recreate the original Woodstock because it wasn't even close. It was on a concrete slab. You know what I mean? They didn't. I mean, I was probably the best they could have done or the closest they could have done maybe, but I don't know. It was just funny because they actually got really good bands to go there. Every night they had a really good headliner, the bands, and that's how they sold the tickets, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that documentary, it's a 4-episode documentary on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I think it's 4 episodes are each an hour long. It's pretty wild. And I think they did it that way so every episode is a day, because it was 4 days. It was Thursday to Sunday. So I think the first episode's Thursday, second episode, because it progressively got worse. The last day was, they burned the whole place down. It was, yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
What were the artists doing? They were just this is a disaster.
Well, that was part of the problem.
I'm not gonna show
the
up
people
now,
who ran the place were oh, we blame the artists for egging them on, and it was dude, they were putting on their show. One of the big arguments was Limp Bizkit playing Break Stuff, and it was dude, that was their hit song. How are they not gonna play that song?
Yeah, they're not.
They shouldn't have played that. They saw what was happening. It was dude, you should have security. This is your establishment.
Yeah, they were trying to make
That's
money.
their hit song. You literally hired them to come play that song and then tell them they can't play that song? That's what? Come on.
Crazy.
What did you think was going to happen?
really something. Damn,
Yeah,
dude.
it's funny. But yeah, that's a good documentary. If you should check it. Check it out. It's pretty good. All right, let's close this thing out. I've had a good one. I don't know how long we've been going, but it's been a while.
Oh, hours.
Probably.
Yeah.
I would think so.
I want to do another one.
Another episode?
Yeah.
It was trouble getting you to do the first one. You
I
wanted to
know.
say- you know,
It's fun.
Took you 4 months.
Yeah,
No,
that's
yeah. Dude, like I said, I could do this.
We should do another one. Let's do some Doom stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That'd be great.
You pick the album.
Yeah.
Do whatever
All right.
album
I'm
you
gonna
want.
pick a Doom album, and we can run another one.
Well, now you ruined the surprise for everybody, but all right.
Yeah. All right. I got some other stuff.
No.
Up my sleeve.
Pick it. It doesn't matter. It's fine. A lot of people don't know about Doom. It's kind of like one of those.
Well, that was a funny, like, when my brother, his birthday's November 16th, but apparently that's when Food was released 20 years ago, and it's the 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So for his birthday this year, I sent him, like, the album.
Wait. Oh, 2004? Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. His first album was 99. That was
November 16th,
Doomsday was
2004. So
99.
I was like, we both loved that album, and I was
Yeah.
like, I just sent him the album, and I was like, go buy yourself a beef patty with cheese. But
I mean,
yeah.
he's another guy. He doesn't put out a bad album. Like everything
Before
he
we
does.
wrap, do you feel like Talking Heads? I was gonna ask you, like, do you feel like they're very influenced by them? Like, if you were gonna talk to them, would you be like,
I don't think an album like that could exist without a band like that.
No, right?
Directly, do I think they directly would quote? I have no idea. I mean, I
wonder.
yeah, you'd have to X them. But yeah, I think that the styles that they show in that album are direct results of albums like Fear of Music coming out, because, like I said, there was kind of nothing like that before. That's why Talking Heads was just such an influential band for all the bands of the 80s and everything that comes after it. They made music that nobody had heard before, really, you know. And as much as I don't consider them one of my favorite bands, you have to you
got to give credit where
give
credit's
credit
due.
and appreciate what they did for music as a whole, even if you don't like them. It's just bands like that kind of just paved the way for a whole decade, really. I mean,
It's pretty crazy.
I mean, to be the first to come out with those type of sounds in rock and roll and have everything pushed into that direction, where there were just all these bands, you know, kind of like seeing that and like, oh, we can do this now, we can do this, we can do this. I mean, they're just a super influential band. I mean, I know for a fact that there are so many bands out there that would accredit them for being able to create music like they did. I would think Parquet Courts would, for that album especially, because it's just that kind of dance punk album that they kind of created.
Yeah, like same vibes. I notice a lot of parallels. I always compare it to like the visual arts because I'm more comfortable in that area. Like, I wonder what it's like for a band like that when you realize, like, you know, you're like the first person in Manhattan making like pop art stuff, and then like you blink your eyes and 10 years later go by and like everyone's doing pop art, and then like now it's 2024 and people are doing like pop art action figure art and pop, you know, like using all these new mediums but having the same kind of conversation. I mean, I wonder if you just sit in your chair with like your coffee and just go like,
oh yeah. I mean,
look what I've done.
Sure
It's
people
like such a
know
cool, like,
I mean, I'm
the
sure
ripples.
they understand. Yeah, I mean that's how it works, man. I mean that's
all you can hope for.
everything is like, you know, you can't have one artist without another that came before it, and that's just the way that it works. This is generational music. You know, when you're an artist creating music, your influences are the generation before, and that generation, just them being in that generation of classic rock and being able to do that type of music, be able to create that type of music at that time period before any of that was really prevalent. I mean, that's also the problem with listening to albums like that, what people don't realize, right? They're going to listen to that album and be like, oh, okay, it's like an 80s rock album. All right, it's good. It's like, no. If you were alive when it came out, though, it came out in 1979. There was no 80s rock in 1979. It was
Yeah.
1979.
It didn't
like,
exist.
that's what you're not comprehending. That
Yeah.
was the first
You
one.
don't have any kind of like frame of reference.
Well, because you've
So,
already, like,
yeah.
at this point in time,
You've
you've
only
heard
heard,
it
like,
all already. And you can say,
Elvis.
well, that sounds like this and this. Or like, but, dude, that didn't
Yes.
exist yet. This was the thing that
Yeah.
came out. That's
So
why that.
You'll never know what that felt like because you
didn't live through it.
You're coming in.
You would have to live through them coming out with albums to understand what they did. Like, you know what I mean?
It's gotta be so sick.
Yeah.
Oh.
We gotta. We're wrapping it up. We're wrapping it up. All right, brother. Let's shut this down. I'm glad you want to do another one because I got to do as many of these as possible. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out and doing this. I appreciate it. And well, hopefully we get to do another one real soon.
I'll be wearing a mask next time. A do mask.